Okay.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's good to see you. Good to be on the pod for a second time. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I got tons of shit to talk about
Yeah.
because it's funny. I was reading in bed the other night, and I just showed you that COVID video.
Right.
Um, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm like, I was reflecting on the percent, like the high percentage of our population in the Western world, and especially here in the United States, and I think it was worse in other countries like Australia and New Zealand, but of people that literally ingested information as if it was truth and just didn't question it at all. Were literal like sheep because they were scared, right? And it scared me a little bit, dude, because a lot of people that I know that are very smart and I respect fell into this um, kind of just get in line, don't ask questions. Like that's all bullshit, and just giving away their freedoms and just letting the government and corporate America basically do whatever they wanted. I mean, shutting down businesses, right? Like, while just having like, I mean, do you remember seeing that? I think it was like a YouTube video that went viral here in California, where we had a movie studio set up in this like parking lot in LA somewhere, right in the middle of COVID, right? And you have this small business store owner that sells, I think it was like a sandwich shop, this lady that owned a little independent sandwich shop. And she's getting interviewed and basically ranting that like, and they have a fucking like catering set up, tents, hundreds of people. And she can't open her small business, right? That was like the inflection point for me where I was like, oh, this is clearly like pay to play. If you know the right people, COVID's not really that big of a deal and we can get around it. We kind of all know it's a big deal. But if you're just an average person in the world, like you need to think this and you need to shut the fuck up. Right? And if you don't get the vaccine and if you don't do what we tell you, you're a danger to society and your rights should be taken away from you. And it's scary, right? Because if I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat and I'm looking at it from an authoritarian point of view, and if we in fact do have a merger ship between all the large Western governments in the world and probably a lot of the other authoritarian ones, but those are more obvious to us because we're not in the system, we're not being fed the news. We're seeing like, or basically over COVID, we saw a merger that's probably already been in place for a number of years, number of decades maybe, where you have large interests, large corporate interests with billions upon billions, if not trillions of dollars per industry, over total control over government policy. Total control, right? And that happened from the WHO, from these in quotes trusted organizations, and people were so naive to think when they were saying trust the science that people that work in science or the medical field could not be corrupted. And myself even, right? Like I even thought in the back of my head before COVID happened that there's certain things that like are sacred, right? Number one, you would probably think medicine, right? Because we need that to survive, right? That should not be corrupted to the level that we saw it was corrupted during COVID. And food. I recently just watched a little short on the food lobby and the sugar lobby and kind of what's going on there. And it's not really conspiratorial. It's just about greed.
Right.
And it's about competition within the marketplace, right? So, but the problem is our entire government from the top down is corrupt. And it might not be, it might only be a small percentage of people that are actually acting in bad faith, but they're the people in power. They're the heads of those organizations, right? I mean, if you want to pass certain policies and you want to push an agenda to make a shitload of money, you're not going to go to the middle management. You're just going to go. Who makes the decisions? Who's a shot caller? And you're going to find a way to manipulate them with the carrot or the stick. And the carrot is some way through, buying them, funneling them money somehow, funneling money to their relatives. Who knows? And the stick is blackmail, right? Jeffrey Epstein style. So if you're out there and you still think that, especially the federal government and every federal government around the world actually cares about you and wants to save the elderly, like they said in the COVID pandemic, you're wrong. Period. And I think it's very telling with the president that we have today. And the obvious, like, everyone knows what's going on here. Like, if you could create a persona of a human being that could be easily controlled, he's it. He has dementia. He's 80-something years old. He's been in politics his whole life. America has culminated to this point where it's over, right? Like, if there isn't a major revolution over the next decade or two, we're going to continue to see just this weird cultural downfall and financial downfall of America, most likely. And if you don't see that, if you don't feel that, then God, like, I don't know what to tell you.
I don't think people care. I mean, it's sad, but I think
people don't have time.
People just don't. They don't care about that, because realistically, what's happening is, it's mainly what I think, and this is all just what I think. This isn't. I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like mainly what's going on is we were a country designed to where we're supposed to listen to what our government says. That's how it's always been. It's designed to be that way. To don't question your government, just follow.
U.S. is good.
At 18,
we're the good guys.
At 18, you signed to be, you're their property, whatever it is, the draft, I forget what it's called, where you have to sign up, and every male has to do that thing at 18 where it's like, if we need you, if there's a war, we need you, you have to, call, you have to answer when your country calls. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole thing that I think is we were raised on that. We were raised as Americans. We were raised about, follow your country, trust your country. And with this COVID-19 thing, that's how they wanted us to act. They wanted us to be like, hey, everybody, like the perfect world, according to the United States government, would have been, hey, everybody, it's time for you to get a vaccine. This COVID going around, and everyone was supposed to be like, okay, we trust you, sure. But realistically, you have all these situations that the government just doesn't play fair. They play dirty a lot.
Yeah, they broke a number of constitutional rights.
And they're surprised when people say, no, I don't want to take this vaccine that you're mandating.
If you say that, so this is what was happening on Twitter, right? And we know with the Twitter files, the extent of this. And if you don't know what the Twitter files are, look up Twitter files. Elon Musk recently bought Twitter, and he exposed a number of situations where there was direct collusion between the federal government and federal agencies and Twitter employees to silence people that had a differing opinion than the mainstream narrative. Period. It's not up for debate. It's a fucking fact.
And I know I shouldn't be taking my advice from actors and shit, but Russell Brand, he's also an activist. I like him too. He did this thing where he went on some show. I forget which show. I think it was Bill Maher, and he was talking about. He put up facts. I don't know how he found them. Probably just surfing the net. I don't know. No one cares to look at the facts. He pulled up charts that said, do you know who profited the most in 2020? Fucking Pfizer, all these pharmaceutical companies. And he's like, isn't that interesting? That was, and that's the bottom line, I think, when it comes to that video, this video we're talking about, that's the bottom line, is that the people don't talk about, people we know, but we don't talk about. Our government is fishy, especially when it comes with medical.
And I'll tell you why people aren't talking about it. One of the reasons.
Our medical's fucked here.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the point.
Yeah. And if you look at the inflation costs based on industry, right, over the last, I don't know, I think it was like 5 years, this chart that I looked at, Medicare and like medical costs have gone up crazy, right? And it's not just because of COVID. It's because of a number of things and regulation and basically just total capture and corruption.
Right.
But one of the things that I was going to mention that I try to tell people when, you know, they're like, okay, I kind of know all this stuff's going on. I have a feeling that things aren't right. So like, what's one of the main problems? And there's a number of problems, but one that I think makes sense to a lot of people is that, yeah, they don't have time, but they're also thinking and getting enraged about the emotional, like bullshit, triggering, bipartisan, trans LGBT, you know, whatever you want to call it. Like that's what they want to preoccupy you with. They don't want you to actually think about the monetary inflation that's happened and who profits from that. Just like you talked about who profited over COVID and how, you know, Pfizer, among other large pharmaceutical corporations, basically demonstrated total regulatory control over our health system, right? Like you can't sue Pfizer. They made it so you can't sue them. It's like Operation Warp Speed. And they had intel, like when Trump started this whole vaccine initiative, this was like spearheaded by intel agencies. Why the fuck are intel agencies spearheading a vaccine that has everything to do with health and nothing to do with intelligence?
For profits.
Ask yourself that question, right?
For profits, yeah.
Did you know they also ran something? I think it was like Operation 201. It's going to be the wrong name, but look it up. Like COVID, you know, acting out or COVID playbook or whatever. They had Fauci. They had a number of different Western high-ranking officials, people from the WHO, as well as intelligence officials that orchestrated the whole fake pandemic situation. And it's on YouTube. You can Google it and find it. It's like multiple hours. And they basically run through the whole COVID pandemic. And you know what one of the main focuses of that operation was? Or that like fake operation, whatever, is censorship. How do we censor misinformation? Right? Because what's happening right now, I think, if you're gonna step back and be like, okay, what does this all mean? This is a lot of information you're kind of throwing at me. We live in the age of information. Okay? You have more information at your fingertips than any average human being in the history ever of mankind, right? We each have it. Like if you want to know about anything, you can almost instantly know about it. And you can and if you want to dig, you can get multiple different takes. A lot of people don't dig and they just soup up the fucking
first thing
mainstream media and they read the title and that's it. And that's fine. They don't have time. They have kids. They have a family. I get it. But what's happening right now, and I think all this corruption that you're seeing, and if you are paying attention and you're like, Jesus Christ, like our world is fucked. I think it's always been this way. I think they've just been able to operate with buying off the you know, TV channels and the news and pushing specific narratives, and we didn't have any insight into it as like an average public.
We don't have it, like you said, we don't have everything at our fingertips, so we could double check and you know, like see. But back then in the 60s, if they told you one thing, there was no way you can verify it. It was just like you take it for their word, and that's what I'm saying is in the beginning of this that video. That's basically what it's supposed to. That's how it was in 2020. Is we're telling you to do this, you're supposed to do it, and that was the normal up until. I mean, there are a lot of people from anything who will be like, you know, there's people who don't have electricity. There's people who don't want to, you know, who don't have internet, who don't have a phone because they don't want the government to hear. You know, they do their own thing. Yeah. Everyone has their thing. And it just turned out that in 2020, a lot of people had the same thing. They didn't want to take the vaccine, which is crazy to look back now and think, well, people got fired. People got fired for not taking the vaccine. People lost their jobs. Yeah. And like I saw a clip the other day, which
2 brother-in-laws actually that had to deal with that.
I saw a clip the other day that, you know, where it was supposed to be a comedy clip where this guy goes to a Trump rally and he's you know, interviewing people and just making them look stupid, basically making people look stupid, like rednecks, just like, you know, stupid rednecks. And one guy was like, you know, talking about how he got fired and you got fired from your job because you didn't take the vaccine. Yeah, I didn't. Who did you work for? Oh, I worked for myself. He was self-employed. And so that was the joke. I mean, it was a real situation. It was a comedian, news anchor, you know, interviewing real people. And that was supposed to be the joke, but in real life, if you really cut that up, yeah, I get the humor in it. But if you cut it up, that's crazy. That is pretty crazy that happened, and we're laughing at it. It's supposed to be a funny thing according to this clip, but it's like that really happened. People lost their jobs
because people lost their entire life savings in their business they worked for decades, maybe. When
realistically, what happened was the vaccine. It may have helped some people, but ultimately, it didn't make a difference when it came to who it affected, who it hurt, because
it
there were people
really do anything.
There were people dying from COVID who had the vaccine.
Yeah, and there were reports that if you got the vaccine, like you were more liable to die from COVID.
I don't know anything about that. I just know that.
No, there were though, right?
COVID. I don't know about that.
That was towards the end of the video that we watched. And by the way, the video that we watched, I sent it to Joey. It's basically this guy compiled a bunch of mainstream and celebrities and people of authority that were telling you all of these lies. From number one, you're not safe. Like that was the first one, right? It was like no one is safe. Everyone was repeating this. No one. So we need mass hysteria, right? And the easiest way, I think, you're going to take away the rights of, a country of 350 million simultaneously is to scare the fuck out of them.
Yep.
That happened with 9/11 too, right?
That happened with 9/11.
And they're digging into all of our emails, right? Taking away our freedoms as individuals to fight back if we want to fight back against the government. And that's kind of what this is the kind of trajectory that I'm going to, is that the government has gotten way too big, way too powerful. And then if you combine that with the money and the resources of corporate America, and these aren't just American corporations, these are global corporations, right? They operate globally and they generate trillions of dollars. So they've had a playbook for the last 100 years, maybe, or 50 years, let's say. And that playbook is starting to get disrupted, right? You're starting to see people wake up and fight back. And those people, I can show you another video that guy did. It's hilarious because like all the mainstream media, everything that was like that they didn't want to come out about these politicians, it was Russian bots. And the Russian bot thing ended up being this hoax. And
how'd they find out?
Because they couldn't provide the data. So like, okay, like there's this thing, I forgot what the group was called, but they had these dashboards up saying like, this and that, and whatever the issue was that they wanted to kind of play down, that actual Americans were posting on Twitter, like hashtags or something, they would say it was Russian bots, right? So there's way, and a lot of people bought that. But what I'm trying to say is that like the government is too big, and electing Donald Trump or electing Biden, like that, in my opinion, is not going to fix it.
No, hell no.
I think what you need to do is understand that people need to be fired from the government. They need to be defunded. Yeah. Like defund the police? No, we need to defund bureaucrats. We need to defund this industrial complex of every single industry, including the most sacred being medicine and food, that is literally killing us.
Mm-hmm.
Literally killing us.
Well, you know what? I saw a tweet the other day that was very, very insightful to me, that this random guy was talking about, you know what we need to do, and which I thought was a very good idea. He said that according to our government, people who are like, 65, 75, they're considered, what's it called? Senior citizens. And they that's when you start to question, you start to wonder, they have to take tests for licenses, have to make sure that they have constant.
They can still function normally.
But they have to have, they keep getting checkups and on that. And you can't work. Like there's certain places that won't allow you to work. Like, you're too old to work here. You're a senior citizen, that we can't hire you. It's a cap.
Yeah.
So why are everyone in the government 80? Like basically he was saying is if that rule applies to us citizens, it should apply to the fucking government. There's so many people in office who are in their 80s. Why are they making decisions for us? They don't know what the fuck. They're good. They're good. Their family's good. They die. They're getting, the family's getting all the money that they saved, that they have, all their assets. Why are these, millionaires who, maybe billionaires, who knows what these people make? These fucking government, they've been in the fucking government since they're 20. They're in their 80s now. Who knows what?
Joe Biden,
who they're fucking rubbing shoulders with.
The one with Dianne Feinstein where she's like in the chair. And
no.
They've been speaking, like her aides have been speaking for her for like the last 5 years.
Yeah. Someone like that. Cut her off.
So take someone like that.
Retire her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't pay her anymore.
Absolutely.
Retire her. Get someone who is like get us a millennial who
set. We need to set like a cutoff date.
Get people in there,
like no one over 65
for us. Yeah. Who will work for us?
Yeah.
You know, someone who's 65. That's like a almost a Gen X. You know, that's almost 65. Or maybe baby boomers now. Like my mom's 65. So, but that's like getting out of that area of these older people who don't know what the fuck.
They don't enjoy your life. Like stop trying to rule over people.
And they don't. 80-year-olds cannot dictate what 20-year-olds, how 20-year-old, 30-year-old need to live.
It's not even that, dude. Because like there's some pretty cool old people. I think. Here's the thing, like Biden. Someone talked about this, and I really liked how he portrayed it. It was basically like, do you think Biden could run any Fortune 500 company or run any kind of business whatsoever in his state right now?
Well, I feel like
zero chance, right?
Like who's that lady you're talking about who had AIDS?
If he became the CEO
he could.
of fucking McDonald's, but hold on. If he became the CEO of McDonald's, that stock would plummet.
I don't think so. I think if he had AIDS, people who covered for him,
but it would.
He would find a way.
But it would, because everybody would be like, we have because the free market. We're not necessarily in a fully free market, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, if you live in a free market, like they won't allow that to happen, right?
Well, why do we allow Biden to be
because that's not a free market. Because that is inherent corruption.
So on every level, because you vote, because the people get to vote for him. So you're saying a free market,
so part of the Twitter files as well, right? So the Hunter Biden laptop. I hate to say that because it's just such a stupid topic of conversation. But the fact is that we have literal proof on emails that he's feeding money to his father, the big guy, Joe Biden, right? And you have 40 some odd ex-Intel officials headed by Anthony Blinken sign this petition saying that, this is Russian disinformation right before the election. What do you call that? That is collusion to overthrow the election. To influence the election, excuse me. Not to overthrow, excuse me. But that's clearly collusion by all like Intel officials to basically hide this little juicy piece of corruption that might overturn the election. But that's not getting looked at. That's not getting talked about. That was originally a conspiracy theory forever. And the FBI is also colluding in this. They won't release certain things. So that's another thing. Like you have corrupted people within the FBI and the CIA that are, it looks like from the outside that they're working with the Democratic Party, but they're just deep state people that are entrenched and they want to preserve their own situation. And I think the friendliest group, or maybe the most corrupt group, I don't know how it works, they're working together, right? And and they're because I think Trump might have represented this situation where he came in to kind of bust things up and break up the party, and they didn't like that, right?
Right.
So the last person that challenged the CIA, really challenged the CIA and said, I'm going to break them up into 1,000 pieces, was JFK.
Right.
And it recently came out, if you aren't paying attention, that Oswald, that was originally framed and then killed by Jack Ruby, which was another FBI associate, or I think he was associated with the FBI. But Oswald, it came out through these redacted documents that still aren't 100% redacted. And it's illegal that these documents are still redacted about the JFK assassination. And the government's basically giving the public the finger and saying, nope, I'm not going to let you have this information. Fuck you. But it came out that Oswald did operations with the CIA before he was, alleged of killing the president of the United States as this commie that kind of got a rifle and stood up in a building and hit the president of the United States in the head in a moving car with an antiquated rifle from, I don't know what, 100, 200 meters away, whatever it was.
Shit.
It's nonsense, right? And there's this really good reporter, Whitney Webb, and she's opened my eyes up because I love how she reports because it's not based on like her own intuition or anything. She just takes public record, public document, and she adds everything up. Oh, you were part of this corporation. Oh, you were here. You were friends with this person. You were associated with this person, with this group, blah, 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 puts it all together and basically presents this thesis of like basically her whole thing is that
Corruption.
corruption, and the government is essentially operating like an organized crime syndicate. And one of the prime examples of that through her reporting, in my opinion, is a man named Mark Middleton, where he was involved. Number one, he was the guy that Jeffrey Epstein spoke to, I think, the majority of the 17 times that he visited the White House during the Clinton administration. And the funny thing about this is that, okay, he was meeting with Epstein. Obviously, he's a shady figure, right?
Right.
And he was tied up into Intel and all that good stuff. But so he's meeting with him, and fine, okay, great. And at that time, there was a lot of questions being asked around the Clintons and a specific Chinese family that had contributed to his campaigns through roundabout ways since he was like the governor of Arkansas, or whatever he was in Arkansas. I'm not that great with all that, but long story short, Mark Middleton starts getting questioned, right? Like, what's going on here with the corruption? This isn't even Epstein. No one's talking about Epstein. Epstein's CIA. He's protected.
This was before.
Yeah, he's intelligence.
So the smart guy they were getting with him before.
Yeah. So Mark Middleton he's meeting with Epstein in the Clinton White House whenever Epstein comes to visit. Okay. And he's also tied up in this corruption scandal with this very, very powerful Chinese family that's buying off politicians and potentially the president and contributing to his campaign. So hold on real quick.
Why was he there? Why would Epstein go to the White House? They never found out why.
That's a good question.
They don't know that.
We don't know. What was he talking to Mark Middleton about?
Right.
But I'm getting so Mark Middleton is getting questioned by Congress. They're like, dude, what's going on? Why are you tied up in this stuff with the Chinese? Blah 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 blah. Bush gets elected. So presidents can pardon people.
Senior or talking about what?
Junior. Right after Clinton. Yeah. The first person he pardons, Mark Middleton. I thought like they're at odds, right? Like, isn't Clinton not like Bush, the Republicans, the Democrats, right?
Well, it could have been something that was in the government that like you have to do this.
That's the whole point that I'm trying to bring across, is that we don't have a two-party system in this nation.
No, I believe
it is pro wrestling for people that are that want to get engaged and like
I like
and,
that. Pro
and
wrestling.
basically they want to care about something and they want to be pissed off about something and they want to fight for something, which is like
literally pro wrestling.
It's a human need.
That's
it's pro wrestling.
Crazy.
It's pro wrestling. So he's basically pardoned. Okay, that's weird. You would think that Bush would want to like drill him because, gosh, he could have been tied up in corruption from the previous Democratic president. Fuck that guy. Let's get him, right? I'm an American.
Right,
no, wrong. I'm a Texan, right? And Bush is a total piece of shit. I mean, the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, we can go into all that. He's horrible. They're all horrible. But funny thing is, just recently, when all this Epstein stuff came out, you know what happened to Mark Middleton? He was shot in the chest
with a shotgun. He died.
And he hung himself with an electrical cord. And if you Google it, just Google it, Mark Middleton, and you'll see his family. So like everything about the court records, everything was like suppressed. You can't have access to it. The photos, his family can't even access the photos. And apparently this happened on property that is associated with the Clinton Foundation. I don't know about all that. I haven't verified that.
Can you back up? He was electrocuted and he shot himself at the same time?
He shot himself in the chest with a shotgun and he hung himself. But it's suicide. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. It's suicide. And by the way, he met with Epstein like I think 15 or 17 times excessive. In the Clinton White House.
I want to die that bad.
That's like, hey, guess what? You want to say something? You want to speak up? Yeah. You're going to get a shotgun blast to the chest.
Sounds like torture.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Sounds like torture.
So there's obviously deep state. There has to be, right? Because if you think about it just from a logical perspective, right? You have people that have operated within the government at some of the highest levels, and that's their career, right? Like you're talking 20, 30, sometimes over 30 years. And these presidents come in for 4 years. If they're lucky, 8 years, and they're out. You're still there, right? Whoever you are.
Oh, yeah.
So you have your own interest. You're running your own operations if you're in the CIA or FBI or whatever. And it's self-preservation, right? You're trying to do your thing. And that's what it is. I don't believe it to be this crazy cabal of people working together. I think it's just our whole system has become extremely corrupted from the top down.
Go to your gamma. Go.
And it's very obvious. And like, if you think that voting a certain way is going to fix it, you're wrong. We need to have a revolution where we downsize the federal government, period. And we give more rights back to states, local county, and like even your city that you live in. And that's what you need to be focused on. Because all the federal government really should do is make sure that we're safe and make sure that if, you know, your neighbor comes and kills you or something, or something like that happens, or if there's a drug that's killing a bunch of people, then maybe they can act and basically they just need to protect us. That's it. They don't need to do anything other than that, right? Just run the military, do your thing, and then we can figure it out state by state, because that's one of the beautiful things about the United States and how everything was set up, in the fact that we have a bunch of like petri dishes, but they're trying to make it just one uniform deal, right? And when in reality, states should have all the rights where they can interact and kind of figure out what works best and fail and maybe enact a law, and maybe it's a failure and then we can learn from it, right? But to just give all this power all the way up to the federal government and pay all these taxes and reinforce this corrupt system is asinine. It's crazy. And people that, like, hopefully this might wake you up and have you think about like voting for an independent, voting for a libertarian. Just don't vote for like these people. Like, just start voting for someone else. And I know it's not going to, you're probably not going to see that person be elected, but that's the only way I see it. It's the only way I see America surviving like the next 200 years. Because the way we're going right now, it's just not looking good. And I can get into all that, but it's depressing.
No, Biden's trying to go for another term, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's gonna hit. I don't know if that's gonna work. Like, that's so crazy to think that. It's so crazy.
It is, because it's like all ego, and
he's playing the old game.
Yeah,
he's playing the old game of like, well, I did one term, I can do two. Dude, can you do 2 terms? Like that's a question that we have for him.
I think he has the lowest approval rating of any president.
He has a low approval rating right now.
I think it's the lowest ever. I think it just came in. I think it was like 30 something.
Regardless of his approval rating, I think that if he does get elected, which he probably will, it's going to be a real, like you're saying, like, people have to wake up.
Yeah,
like, this is a real fucking situation we're in.
And here's another thing you can do for yourself, because it's easy to feel hopeless in this situation because the powers that be are so powerful right now, right? We're also seeing a major separation of wealth from the middle class up to the rich, I guess. And it seems to be getting worse and worse. And I'm a huge Bitcoiner. We can talk about that, but that's I believe one of the root problems that need to be fixed. And that might sort itself out eventually, hopefully in our lifetime. But, yeah, dude, it's this situation where you have to draw a line in the sand for yourself. And whatever that is, I don't know what your limit is, what you're passionate about, what you won't stand for. Mine personally is like central bank digital currency. So if California doesn't sign or put into law the right for me to legally hold my Bitcoin, that the government can't confiscate it, which a number of states have already done. I think Texas, Montana, and I think Florida might have also done it, among a couple others. If they implement CBDCs through fear, through some financial crisis, however they're going to do it, maybe through incentivization of here's a couple $100 and fear of the banks are going to lose all your money, we're going insolvent, you need to have a direct line to the central bank, then I'll leave California, right? Like, that's and we've already seen that with everyone fleeing a lot of these liberal authoritarian states that are inherently corrupt and taking your tax dollars and setting them on fire, aka giving them to special interests. So that's probably the most effective thing you can do, other than voting, is like just move where like your ideals align and stick with those people, because yeah, like I don't know what else to do, right? I mean, I guess you could start a YouTube channel and do all that, and I mean, there's a number of different ways, but as far as like, I don't know what to do, if you feel helpless, just set some standards for yourself, right?
Right.
Like if the tax rate goes up to this with the state that I'm living in, I'm fucking out. Right? Like if California keeps raising their taxes, I love the ocean. I love to surf. Like I love it. It's the only reason I'm here really. And my wife's family is here. But yeah, like there needs to be a revolution, and it needs to come from like people like you and me. And we need to wake up, and we need to spend a little more time investigating things and not just taking in these major media outlets' narratives. Because there's a lot of good independent journalists that have kind of sprung up. And yeah, they have an opinion, but guess what? They're funded through subscription models, right? They aren't being paid by anybody else that we know of. And there are some good journalists out there. It's not all doom and gloom. But yeah, dude, it's coming back to the COVID thing, it really scared me because it just like everyone just fell in line and like no one was questioning anything. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were silently.
Yeah, they were. I saw some people that were, but ultimately, the mass. But even then, it's that kind of thing that like, what can you do? Like just go with the flow. Like that's something that I kind of saw early on, like with the mask thing when you go.
That's so un-American though, like
right. You know? But that's just the thing is just go with the flow. You know what I mean? Which is that's my whole life. That's been my whole life. Just go with the flow because my whole life, like I told you, I was raised for my family to never trust the president, to trust the government. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I was at a young age. I was raised that way. And I've always, like my whole life, even like when I look at history and look at the past presidents, I've never seen or I've never heard of a president or seen a president that I've ever fully been behind. Like every single president in our lifetime, before we were born, I'm looking at him going like, what the fuck? Like it's really, really, like you said, like you have to be like, it's an insider's thing. It's like I forgot how you put it earlier. It's another game. It's a game they're playing that we're not a part of.
Yeah. And
that's how I've always felt my whole life. Like things change. I forgot how I was relating it to like growing up, like we were taught, like we'd get our hands in kindergarten and we put them on papers and we trace them and then we make little turkeys. We put them on the wall and it was like Thanksgiving, like, oh, the Pilgrims and the Indians, like they ate turkeys. That's not what happened. Like, you know, they're the whole, that was quick. You know, I'd go home with the turkey and my parents would be like, they would teach me the real Thanksgiving. Like that happened, but then they ended up killing, like the Pilgrims killed all the fucking Native Americans.
And that shit happens too, right? Like
when I was a kid, Indians, that was the thing. Indians, tell us what happened. Indians, they weren't Indians. They weren't Indians. Yeah. They're Native Americans. They were not Indians. Mm-hmm. Columbus thought he was in India, but he wasn't. So that's why he named them Indians. They're not Indians. They were natives, Native Americans, and that's why people still call them Indians. I think that's crazy. That's like the first. That's like what you're saying. Like that's the first strike for me when someone calls someone Indian. Oh, you know the Indians, Pilgrim and the Indians.
Yeah, and you have a great point. I'd never thought about this. And who killed all the Indians?
Right, Pilgrims.
The fucking government.
Yeah, right. No, right. And that's what my parents instilled in me when I was a young kid. Is like, yeah, this is what they're showing you, but this is what really happened. And I've always been like, whoa, why? As a kindergartner, as a first grader, like, why do they do that? But that's something my parents always showed me, like the contrast. And then I had a teacher one time who told me about the Lusitania, how his grandpa was there when it happened. And I forget what specific, I don't remember Lusitania in history, like what happened. Yeah, I just know it was a submarine that sank and they blamed it on a country. Turned out it wasn't that country's fault, but at that time, when it happened, they blamed that country. But
just like the pipeline, right?
Right. But that's something that my teacher was telling me in real time happened when he was a kid. His grandpa told him, just like my parents told me, the truth. And this kid would go and tell his teachers back in the day, no, you're wrong. The teachers would tell the kid, you're wrong.
Yeah.
When then he got older, the truth came out like 20 years later. Oh, it didn't happen this way. It happened this way. Just like his grandpa had told him. Mm-hmm. And he had always told us, like I wonder what those teachers thought.
Yeah.
When I was telling them that as a kid, and they're laughing at me, calling me an idiot, you know. And then it turns out that I was right because I knew someone that was there when it happened. Mm-hmm. So that's been my whole perspective, my whole life. It just kind of like keep it loose, keep it like when they tell you something, it's like, okay, well, we don't know what really happened, but something happened. Like Bin Laden, that's a thing. Bin Laden died. Yeah. We don't know how he died, but they're going to tell us, oh, we went in and shot him. We don't know.
No, we don't. I I mean, actually, we have footage of that, right?
Have you seen it?
Yeah, but who knows? And maybe they wouldn't. Who knows, right? Yeah, like the moon landing and all this.
Right,
all this
right.
shit. But like what I just started thinking of when you were talking about that was kind of the centralization and decentralization of humans over time. So I'm a big Bitcoiner, and there's a lot of things that represents, but it's very similar, in my opinion, to the printing press and the fact that it can liberate individuals. And what the printing press did, for the most part, back in, whenever it came out, hell of a long time ago, was it separated church and state, right?
Right.
Because what happened was, in order to be able to, worship and have a close relationship with God, you needed to go to the Vatican, right? You needed to go through the Catholic Church or the Christian Church or the mosque or whatever, right? And you couldn't read. Majority of peasants and people didn't know how to read. And the only books were written. You know how long it takes to handwrite a book? So those were very scarce, right? So you had a lot of illiterate people that accepted the fact that the only way for them to have a relationship with God was to go through this centralized authority. And what happened was a printing press came out, they printed the Bibles, people started to learn how to read, and they said, fuck you, I don't need you to have a relationship with God, and furthermore, why are you so close to the government, right? And that's when the separation of church and state happened. You had this decentralized learning, right? You had this decentralized pass of knowledge to the individual, the power of the individual to fight back. And I think that's what we're seeing now. We're at peak centralization, where we've had these corporations and government come together to control these centralized media outlets. Think about it: newspapers, fucking your local TV, maybe not your local TV stations, but they definitely take orders from whoever their NBC network is, right? On the big issues, on the global issues. And now we're seeing a decentralization, a splinterization of information from these centralized authorities, right? So I'm hoping that brings about some kind of separation from the state, that we cut the state down again in this centralized power, because, I mean, something needs to happen. They're out of control. They spend over $6 trillion a year. There's never been a bigger organization in the world than the U.S. government. They consume over 30% of U.S. GDP. We're effectively lighting probably 30 to 50% of our tax money on fire, because it's going to just corrupt individuals. And I mean, the whole situation in Ukraine, where they're funneling. I mean, basically, if you're not aware, I'll let you know what's going on in Ukraine. What I think is going on. What have we sent? Over $150 billion. What if we took $50 billion and we invested it in impoverished communities around the United States? That would fucking change a lot, right? Try to give these people and children the proper opportunity. But no, we're going to give them 150 plus billion with a B dollars, so they can funnel that money into their own system, into their corrupt. So Ukraine, by the way, it was known before this whole situation happened as the most corrupt country in the EU, period. You can CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they all collaborated that. They're sending it back to our weapons manufacturers, right? You see how that works, the military industrial complex. It's okay, so, and then, it's just a big rigmarole.
I wonder what 1 billion would do to feed the.
Think about it.
To feed the hungry.
Think about if you injected
1 billion.
1 billion. That's 1,000 million. Think if you took $100 million and injected it into every impoverished urban area,
or
around
the
the
school
US.
System. Anything else.
anything to help our society.
Anything
right?
for the kids or for the less fortunate. I think that would be. I agree with you.
So this is why you need to get mad. This is why, because you have the information now. We know what's going on. If you look a little further and you reject what's being shoved down your throat and you look at alternative sources and make your own decision up, I mean, maybe you think I'm wrong in a number of cases, and that's fine. But I think one thing is undeniable, that the federal government is inherently corrupt. You can't argue that.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
Honey.
Well, so we were talking about the centralization and decentralization over time, and what happened with the church and state, and kind of how that's how that's manifesting within media. And because I'm not going to say how, but I have like I work in the media and entertainment industry to like kind of adjacent to them. And if you're paying attention to that at all, it's like ratings are going to shit. There's all time, low like trust in mainstream organizations. And yeah, like it's splintering out into individuals that realize that they can use their voice as their truth and kind of do proper reporting, hopefully. But the idea that in order to believe something, it has to come from a mainstream source is hopefully in the next 5 years, if they keep going the way they're going, they're going to go bankrupt, or they're just going to be hanging on by a thread, right? Because I think a lot, especially Fox News, because I think a lot of their viewership is the elderly. They just keep it on, right? They just keep the fucking channel on because they can't even get up to change the remote, And MSNBC, I think that's a lot of older people as well, and a lot of these. So yeah, I mean, the next generation is a little more savvy, and they know how to ingest information from different sources and hopefully gather their own opinion, whatever that may be. And here's the deal, right? I don't give a shit if you're a flat earther. If you want to believe that, that's fine. I think it's a problem if, the world believes that, but that would never happen because it's so indisputably untrue, and we can prove it because it's something based on our reality, right? But that also comes back to the idea of humanity. So what you have right now, and this goes back to how they're keeping people divided and they're not thinking about the big issues, is if you believe that like half of the world or half of the nation are fucking idiots, then you think something like that could happen. You honestly think that we could pass laws in the government based on a flat earth theory. I don't think that. I think the majority of people are good, and the majority of people aren't stupid. And given two paths, we have a debate. Flat earthers, if there was a real debate about that going on and people did care about the issues, we would have much more debates. We would have much more deep discussions on mainstream media, and we don't, right? So the whole idea of, misinformation and, it's going to spread. It's going to spread and everyone's going to believe it. That's a way for them to enact censorship and tell you that they are the authority, that they need to control that from happening. But that's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Yeah, there's going to be conspiracy theories here and there, but guess what? A lot of those conspiracy theories have come true. Oddly. Like
aliens.
Yeah, I mean, well,
that's one of them.
And for me, I like to base on fact, right? As much as I can. And the fact is that we don't have any. I think there has been some metals that have been retrieved that we can't really understand how they were manufactured. But other than that, I want to see the fucking being. I'm like Joe Rogan says, he's like, I would love to believe, or I would love to have aliens, but or I want to believe, basically is what he says. And I want to believe. But yeah, we have some, I mean, those could be advanced US aircraft that are tic-tacking around, maybe some anti-gravity stuff. I like to base my, hardcore beliefs in somewhat reality, but you also have to think outside the box a little bit, and it's fun, right? I mean, the bottom line is you have to, if you want to distinguish what might be up as far as a goal being pushed by the mainstream media, it'll be something that will most likely be pushed by both sides. And I'll give you some examples, okay? Because they really are against trans and fucking LGBT and BLM and all this bullshit, like racism. Like, that's our biggest problem. Like, white nationals are our biggest problem in America right now. No, I'd say we have 130% GDP, and if everyone's unemployed and starving to death, that's probably a fucking huge deal if we go into a major recession and you can't fucking feed your family. Like, that's what we should be talking about.
Well, I think it depends on where you're at. Because if you're like a black kid living in a black community where all you see is just like oppression, that their concerns might be a little bit different.
Okay, but We're talking about the biggest issue as a nation in America.
As a nation.
I'm not saying that there's not of course there's racism.
No, I'm just saying
there's ignorant
there's a
people
lot
everywhere.
of people out there who that's their main concern is like making sure
Yeah.
they stay out of the way.
That's their main concern.
Yeah.
But as a nation, that's not what we should be focused on.
Right.
Period. Because it's
100%.
It's if you look at the numbers, like I'm a data-driven person, right? When I think about this kind of stuff. That's why when COVID happened, I was looking at the data, and especially when I heard about children being vaccinated and the rates at which children were dying, which was damn near zero, I about lost my mind. Because then it was very clear to me that it was all for money. They even talked about vaccinating your dog, bro. Like, anyways.
What?
Yeah. There
No
was like,
way.
Yeah, there was like talk about that, and they were like thinking about developing something.
No.
Yeah.
Vaccinate your dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but what I was saying earlier about how if you're watching the mainstream media and you're like, God, I don't know what to tell from a lie or what I should question. Like, you don't need to question everything. I mean, it's not like they're just spitting lies 24/7. But here's a good indicator. Fox News and NBC both agree that we should do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And what have they both agreed on in the last few years? They've both agreed on you should stay home and it's unsafe.
Take the vaccine.
Right? Take the fucking vaccine. Shut up and take the vaccine. Take the vaccine. Ukraine war. Fox News and MSNBC, every major outlet, right? Russia, right? Those are all major issues that they couldn't have pushed if there was a major divide between two sides. And that's where you see that's where you see, like, in my opinion, that's where the power lies, right? Who's ever pushing those main ideas and being able to buy both sides, because any corporation or extremely rich individual that's worth his salt, he's going to play both sides. That's like game theory 101, or, you know, that's like if you're playing any game, if you can have a winner no matter what, why wouldn't you do that if you have the resources? And that's what people need to wake up. This whole idea that Republicans are racist and, you know, Democrats are idiots and, you know, they can't tell the difference between a man and a woman. Like, that is all nonsense. That is to fill the front of your head with bullshit, so you forget about the fact that we're sending $150 million to Ukraine, and the majority of that is coming back to us through weapons manufacturers, right? That's to fucking tell you that you need to worry about trans lives and Black Lives Matter and police brutality, which police brutality is a thing, but not to the extent of which it was portrayed. And you need to stay in your home, shut the fuck up. Right? Like, that's agreed upon. Like, these are the things that we really need to care about. That's just like common sense, but that's not common sense, right? The Ukraine war isn't common sense. If you talk, if you say something like I'm saying and you're a mainstream personality, you're called a Putin sympathist or whatever, right? It's so yeah. Anyways, that's just a little trick. And not everything that the mainstream media agrees on is going to be wrong, but it's a pretty telltale sign, right? You think about the Iraq war, you think about the big things, right? The big things that where people are going to die, COVID, wars, they all seem to agree on that shit. It's really weird.
It's interesting too, that video that you showed, that was the beginning of it seemed like it was a script. Like it was the same script.
Well, yeah, yeah. Like,
they're all saying the same thing, like in the beginning, like, you know, like the intro.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
And the crazy thing about that is that was only the US. It wasn't, I mean, because this was like all Western nations. It was like the whole world almost. I think Russia, we didn't hear much about Russia. I think Sweden, basically, there was a really interesting thing that happened in Sweden where they're like, no, we're not going to do all that. And they have the same population. I don't know if they have the same density as California per se, but they have the same population, and the area of mass is pretty similar. And they had less deaths, or right in the same as California with all of our lockdowns and everything. And also what happened, what a lot of people don't realize as well, is we're in this huge wealth divide that's been slowly growing over time. And with COVID, like shutting down small businesses and not allowing people to work and having them rely on the government for their stimulus checks, that was like, and all of the money that flowed back to like Amazon and all of these tech companies that did food delivery and goods delivery, and we're allowed to have essential workers, media companies making movies right in the middle of COVID when the sandwich shop is shut down. Like, that was the wealth transfer that happened. And I was telling my uncle this because I was huge into Bitcoin at the time, because I was like, COVID got me into Bitcoin. And I was like, these people don't realize it, but they're taking this $2,000 stimulus check. The majority of the money is going back to corporations, and they're going to pay for that for the next 20 years, as we're paying for it right now with inflation, So yeah, it's, people need to wake up, but unfortunately, if I'm going to put on my skeptic's hat, I don't think people are going to wake up, because US is too soft now, and we've become too soft through generations of prosperity, of exporting basically our inflation out to other nations and wars, and really just, prospering by having the global reserve currency. And I think, unfortunately, that's coming to an end. And that's like, it's not going to be next week. It could take the next 15 years. I don't know. But it's written on the wall, in my opinion, unless something drastically changes within monetary policy and we actually do default on debt and we kind of wake up. But what's going to stop that from happening? Like,
right.
The system has been captured. And the system is set up in a way that anyone who wants to get in to try to stop that system from chugging along is going to be immediately discarded and character assassinated, probably, and have no chance of running for office. So, have you checked out RFK, Robert F. Kennedy?
No, but you were telling me about him.
He's coming to speak here in San Diego on Sunday, and I actually bought tickets to his speech. He's pretty cool because he's the most exciting presidential candidate I've seen since like Ron Paul. If you remember Ron Paul, that was talking about cutting the Federal Reserve, because dude, his uncle was JFK. He's openly talked about on podcasts how he doesn't say it directly, but one way or another, deep state, CIA had a hand in killing his uncle, and maybe his father as well. His father was killed as well. So he has proper motivation. Gosh, I can't remember offhand.
Bobby?
Yeah, Bobby.
Is Bobby Kennedy's?
Bobby
Kennedy, wow.
Yeah.
I remember when he died. There was a movie about him.
Yeah.
That was a good movie. My mom liked him.
So
she met him.
Yeah, dude. And like, he was rampant on Twitter because he's been a lawyer fighting, like, he's worked as a lawyer fighting, the corporate industrial complex for years. And he's seen firsthand, through pollution and, just government greed, basically trying to scoop up profits and trying to cut corners. And especially with his family history, he's pro Bitcoin. He went to the Bitcoin conference and kind of talked about how, he wants to basically give us as citizens, U.S. citizens, the right to hold our own Bitcoin and hold our own keys, which is legal right now, but the government wants to control everything. So they will eventually probably want to have you not hold your own keys because you might evade taxes, and we can't have you not paying your taxes because, we need to get our share, and we'll do, and it's like death and taxes, right? But as sovereign individuals, as free people of the United States, we as individuals need to ensure that our money is our money, and we don't need to have it sitting in a bank. We don't need to have it sitting anywhere outside of our immediate access and ownership, because if we do, the system, which we know is corrupt from the top down, and talk about the banking lobby, I don't even want to get into that shit. They will take it from you through inflation or one other way or another, or they'll just steal it from you, right? We have, there's so many cases of this throughout history of government seizure, and it's a mafia, bro. And that's why, so getting into Bitcoin, that's why it's so important, because it gives you a way to kind of opt out of the current system in a peaceful way, right? And that's what's beautiful about it, is you have this parallel monetary system, which has a ton of benefits, which if you watch any Bitcoin video, they'll probably tell you better than I can, because there's a lot of very phenomenal speakers out there in philosophy around Bitcoin and kind of what it represents to humanity. But in any case, it's you preserving your purchasing power over time. Like, I mean, think of anything worth value and it's shot up in prices over time, like houses. I mean, we can tell it's here in San Diego, right? It's crazy. Cars, yeah. I mean, some cars go down in value, but like classic cars or any kind of asset, and that's just because of the overall printing that's going on. And I think we're at right around 30 trillion right now, and there's no end in sight. We're currently, if you've been watching the news, we're going through this negotiation on the debt ceiling, which is all theater, all pro wrestling. If it's been anything like the last 50 years, then they're probably going to raise the debt ceiling, or they're going to find a way to inject more money into the system. And the dollar is going to continue to be devalued, and you need a way to fight against that, because you can buy stocks, right? You can purchase a house, which are all good things. Those aren't bad things. But what if you have a massive financial collapse that makes 2008 look like walk on the beach, where everything's collapsing and banks aren't safe? Maybe there's a huge cyber attack, which certain powerful individuals have been talking about, they're fearful of, and there's mass hysteria, and it's like the stock market drops 90%, right?
Right.
And we start going through this major depression. You want to have something outside the system that isn't controlled by the system, because what they're going to do is they're going to come up with a new law, right? Like in the 30s, they basically confiscated all the gold from everyone. In the 70s, they couldn't pay their debts based on their gold standard, so they changed the whole monetary standard to be based not on gold, but on nothing, right? And there's all these awesome graphs from 1971 and onwards showing obesity rates and all these horrible things happening after the money was debased, and how that deteriorates the culture from the ground up. Because everything that you interact with in the world needs some kind of tool to transact with, right? And if you can't trust that underlying tool, and if that tool is like an ice cube that's constantly melting, right? That tool that you work for your entire life, it kind of forces you into this gambling degenerate culture of 401ks, meme coins, NFTs, buying fucking classic cars as investments over long term because you can't trust the dollar. That shouldn't happen, right? And you think, okay, well, gold, that's pretty cool, but the financial system's got a hold of that and they papered over it, meaning that you don't really know how many reserves are happening within these gold ETFs, and it's not really a great money in the digital age. So that's why this idea of Bitcoin is so powerful, and that's why it transcends so many areas. It's basically a fun, like, strong money is a fundamental. It's a fundamental of any strong society. It's so important.
I like Bitcoin. I also like Ethereum, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Bitcoin only at this point. I've gone through the rigmarole of crypto, and it took me a while to realize this, and I think it takes a lot of people a while to realize that the 0 to 1 in quotes crypto and Ethereum and all of these other in quotes decentralized cryptocurrencies is, do they stand up to nation level attack? And if the answer is no, then they're probably not decentralized. And if they are some kind of centralized foundation like the Ethereum Foundation, and they're complying with government regulation. So like what happened with Ethereum is they went from proof of work to proof of stake, and therefore bowing the knee to the ESG narrative that we're all going to die in 5 years and we're all going to be underwater. And therefore, OFAC came in, this compliance arm of the government, and now they're basically showing you like nodes that are OFAC compliant and not compliant, right? The idea of a cryptocurrency is that it is uncensorable, decentralized money that can be exchanged around the world. And there's only one cryptocurrency that does that, and that's Bitcoin. And anyone that argues against that is lying to you. Granted.
Or they don't know.
And that's probably 99%. Because people see cryptocurrency, they see it as a get rich quick scheme. And that's perfectly fine. Like, if you want to speculate, if you want to get into the markets, go ahead. If you want to buy like Dogecoin or any of these other, in quotes, cryptocurrencies, then that's fine. It's a free world. Do whatever you want. I don't give a shit. But if you're going to say that, you know, those are superior to Bitcoin because they're faster, or you can share images better on them, or you can do, you know, supply chain better, whatever you want to say, I don't really care. Is it censorship resistant at a national level? And the answer is no. So if this thing grows and it's not properly decentralized, and there's a centralized foundation or a centralized team that's behind it, that team can be corrupted just like every other every other system, centralized system, institution out there, person out there. And it doesn't take a lot to corrupt a specific institution or organization. Normally, you just need to get like, you know, a few top people, carrot or the stick, bribe them, or you blackmail them. And there you go. You can do whatever you want.
So can I ask you some questions that kind of like, you know, because I don't know shit. So I want to ask you questions on if you know, because you seem to be very, very wise when it comes to this information with Bitcoin.
I'm still learning, but yeah.
Well, like one of my things I've always compared, you know, Bitcoin to is the banking system, our current banking system. Like you're saying that Bitcoin is a more free way to own currency. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of anybody getting in trouble for any reason and then they freeze their Bitcoin like they would with a bank account?
They couldn't do that.
That's my main question.
If you're holding it properly.
They can't do that.
Yeah.
But if they were a way to do that, then that means it's not free anymore, right? Then there are stipulations to Bitcoin now all of a sudden. If they find that way they control Bitcoin. The government would have to control Bitcoin to do that.
Let me explain something real quick, which is really important if you're not familiar with Bitcoin. There's something called not your keys, not your coins. And what that means is that's self-custody, right? So you can buy a hardware wallet with a seed phrase that you can enter that seed phrase into that wallet and it generates your wallet, right? It's created. Anyways, what happened like during the FTX and this whole recent crypto collapse is not because of crypto. It's because of centralized exchanges that are corrupt, right?
Got you.
So what happened was, if you held your Bitcoin on Coinbase, not Coinbase wasn't affected, but let's say FTX, you held your Bitcoin on FTX.
What's FTX?
FTX is a crypto exchange, or was a crypto exchange. I think they're still operating.
Okay.
And the owner or the founder, CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, that you've probably heard of, misappropriated a bunch of the funds and gambled away a lot of the funds and, you know, promoted and purchased a lot of advertising in the form of buying out a stadium, paying Tom Brady, doing Super Bowl commercials, and buying the trust of people all around the world, right? Because he had the U.S. exchange, he also had the overseas exchange, which is where a lot of the fuckery happened. And, you know, there's another saying in Bitcoin, like, trust no one, right? That's the whole point, is that you don't have counterparty risk. So if you're holding Bitcoin and you have it on an exchange, if it's not a lot of money, if it's not a lot of money to you, then that's fine. But if it's going to hurt if you lose it, or if it becomes lost or stolen, then you should own it yourself and own that property. And what that'll do, not only is that the best way to custody Bitcoin, but you'll start to hopefully understand what Bitcoin is all about.
It's the freest.
It's like owning cash.
It's the freest way to own something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yours.
Sounds like.
Nobody can take it from you, right? Because you can technically memorize the key in your head, the 12 words or the 24 words, and you can travel around the world with your money in your head. You could also do multi-sig. You could break up. You could set up multiple different keys in different locations. So there's something also called a wrench attack, where if somebody tries to basically hold you up with violence and extract your Bitcoin from you, even if you wanted to and were being tortured, you wouldn't be able to, right? So there are ways around that.
How?
What's that?
How is that not possible?
So like in a multi-sig configuration, you would have multiple keys that would need to come together to authorize a transaction. So you might hold one key, and then you might have someone else,
like your wife,
in another location, maybe your mom, maybe your brother, whatever. Maybe you have it in a safety deposit box, and then you have these different locations of keys, and you only need.
You don't even need to know one. You just write it. You have it in a safety deposit box. Yeah. You don't even know it.
And even if one person finds one of those keys, they won't be able to do anything with it because they don't have the multi-key sig.
Fuck, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like that's a really good way if you're holding a lot of Bitcoin that is very important to you. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to secure your Bitcoin, but unfortunately, a lot of people aren't that technical, and it does seem scary to them.
Yeah, it does sound very, very, because a lot of people forget their passwords. That's the main concern I thought when you first said that. But I mean, if it's very important to you, you got to remember that shit.
Yeah, and it's yours. Like say we get into a world war in a year, and we lose the world war, and we're like Germany in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
That's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't think it is, then I don't know what to tell you. You can literally memorize your keys, right? Hop on a plane, go somewhere else, go to El Salvador if they're still operating in their Bitcoin-free country, and
have all your money.
Yeah, and you have all your money with you. Try to after a world war and living in a nation that's in poverty, or just living in a nation that's in poverty, try going to the airport with like a bunch of gold in your pocket or in your backpack, or you're definitely not going to put it in your case that you're putting on the plane. You're going to have that, and you're going to go through security, and they're going to see either a wad of bills.
If you have to go,
let's say it's even cash. Yeah,
you have to go. You're taking everything. That's happened. You didn't see the finale of Better Call Saul, huh?
No.
Okay, that's what happened to him. That's what happened to him.
Oh, really?
He was trying to leave.
If he had Bitcoin
with larger, exactly. If he had a Bitcoin, he would be okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, and that's another side. Is like, oh, criminal activity, this and that. It's like, do you know how much criminal activity is done through cash?
But
such a nonsense.
But that's something that you're opening up. Is it a lot of criminal activity is probably happening through Bitcoin?
That's okay. So as far as per capita, I think it's lower. The percentage of criminal activity happening on Bitcoin is lower than the percentage of criminal activity happening on the US dollar. And the cool thing about Bitcoin is,
I'm just saying, you
can track all transactions.
I kind of, I grew up with a family with a criminal mind.
Yeah.
That's my first thing. Is like, whoa, you could do a lot of things. You can move a lot of money around.
Yeah, but here's the thing also is that like, the government needs to, like, we're always told to like trust the government. The government needs to trust its citizens. And if I break a law, right, then arrest me. Right? I mean, it's pretty fucking simple.
Right.
I mean, like this whole idea that...
No, I love it. I love it. I love the fact that it's money that you could, it's attached to you. It doesn't move. It doesn't leave. And
this is another cool thing is that it's on a public ledger. So like say you blackmail a company for a ton of money. What is probably the most common criminal attack in Bitcoin, I'm guessing, is the ransom where you hack into a company's website, maybe their e-commerce website or something where they generate a lot of revenue, and you say, I'm going to delete all your data and bring you down to zero if you don't give me $1 million right now and send me a Bitcoin. So they do that. So what happened recently, if you remember, with Pipeline in the U.S., where apparently Russian hackers,
I vaguely remember,
extorted. That. Yeah, but FBI was able to recover those funds, and it's because of the public ledger, right? Because you'll see where that wallet is, and then you'll see where they'll be able to send their Bitcoin to, and you'll be able to create an investigation around that. With cash, it's nearly impossible, right? There's no way to track it. You can filter it.
I've seen them track bills, but it's very, very strenuous. It seems like a very, very, there's like, it goes into, like I saw this thing where this guy stole $8 million from a bank, and they did not know how he did it. They don't know how the fuck he got in the safe, or it was like a piece in Paris or like in London. He stole like a rare something.
Okay.
And they couldn't figure out how he did it. And then they ended up, the last case scenario was they tracked the bills.
Okay.
That's what it was. It was a bank, and he stole the money, and they ended up finding like pieces of it like years later, but they never found all of it. Like $8 million. And that's something too. Like you fucking, with physical money, how much of it's been burnt? How much of it's been, lost, or it's sitting underneath us like 100, meters below us. You never even know. Like it's a fucking fuckload of cash that's buried there for whatever.
Possibly. Yeah. Riches or whatever. Gold.
Yeah.
Gems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I like that Bitcoin concept. You've really, every time you talk to me about it, it seemed to open up a whole new.
And the thing to understand about it is that it's just a technology. Like, and the thing is it wouldn't be so popular if, money printing and corruption at the highest level wasn't so rampant. Like it would have never caught on if the dollar was super solid and they never printed any, and it was a great store of value and the whole world used it and it was awesome. But guess what? That's not the case. The dollar is primarily, and the IMF one of the things that not a lot of people realize as well, and why, this has been an eye-opening experience for me, is there's this guy, Alex Gladstein. He works for the Human Rights Foundation. He's a really smart dude, and he breaks down how the predatory loans work with smaller nations and nations that can be easily controlled through debt and then have their resources extracted via this predatory lending and basically payoff of politicians in the Congo and a number of different areas around the world that we all use for resources like all this shit in your cell phone, So anyone that thinks money, I mean, it's really important what you use for money. And we've all been lied to forever throughout the history of humanity. We've all been lied to by our individual governments and mandated to use this ever dwindling fiat, which will eventually go to zero, because every single currency that has been controlled by a government in the history of man has gone to zero.
Hey,
it's gone to zero.
The Romans.
Yeah.
Then the Romans, they fell. And I don't even know how they fell, but that's like the most famous story in the world is the Romans they used to fucking rule shit. They used to run shit.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Do you know what happened to the Romans?
So they started one of the there were a lot of there was the corruption basically, right? Like
is that basically
government corruption, man. They started clipping their coins, and they had a certain amount of gold in their coins when they first created whatever coin.
Let me know when I got you one too.
Okay. And by the end of the Roman Empire, when they were basically conquered, their coins were made out of like iron, which is like one of the cheapest metals you could possibly, because they literally like physically extracted the gold from the coins and gave the people back something less. Right? Like, and that's what's happening through inflation and printing of dollars, but we don't see that physical process. It's a digital process. And it's on such a grand scale that the average guy that works at 7-Eleven or owns a small business or whatever, owns a big business, doesn't fully realize.
But my question is, what do they think $2,000 is going to do?
What do you talk, like $2,000 for the
for the
stimulus package?
What do you think that's going to do,
dude? I mean, okay, like
to like a home that has like nothing. Like, yeah, it's gonna help you for like a month, maybe even less than that. But it's like,
I mean, people were desperate at that time, and anyone's going to take $2,000. I mean, if the government's going to give me $2,000, I'm going to take it.
That's facts. Yeah.
Right. You know, I mean, and the funny thing about that is they were giving it to everyone that was making under $75,000 a year, even if you were fully employed throughout the whole COVID.
Right.
Because you know why? Because they wanted compliance. They wanted to buy you off with the carrot, right? See, it's the carrot or the stick. But that carrot was poisonous, right? In the form of, oh, and by the way, prices are going to go up dramatically over the next 2 or 3 years, and you're not going to be able to afford to put food on your family for your table. But enjoy that $2,000 that you went and bought a fucking TV from Best Buy with.
Right. Or fucking, some bullshit.
And re-injected it back into the system and stimulated the economy. So, yeah, it's really, really, it's bad stuff, man.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have the time to think about this stuff.
Or it's just one of those things, like I told you, it's just do what you're told, just go with the flow. Like I've been raised that way, but to think, like my parents always told me, like, think, like, look what's happening, but what can you do? What can you do about it? So it's just like a thing, like, okay, this bitch just called this guy an Indian. He's not an Indian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like an adult going, okay, they're using, I see what she's doing, and it's just, I just let it go, like,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yep.
I get it. I understand why you're calling this, the Redskins, oh, that Indian on the fucking logo.
Mm.
I get it.
Yeah.
We're taught that way.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, if you did your own, digging, you would see kind of what you're talking about. Just it's all corrupt.
Yeah, and like to your point, you need to educate yourself about stuff.
Well, I'm lucky that I had parents who did kind of like put that in me. We're like, hey, but you do know, right? That's not normal, right? Yeah. Anyways, going into fucking Bitcoin, man. Fuck. Every time we talk about Bitcoin, I feel like I need to put some in right now.
I know, and I'm hesitant to talk about. I'm super passionate about it, but there's so many people that are so much more articulate and understand it better than I do. I'm kind of like, because another thing about the Bitcoin community is it's kind of ruthless, right?
Yeah,
and it's good that it's ruthless, because they challenge everything, which you should,
right?
You shouldn't just go with the flow, and some people do, but in general, if you do enter that community, especially on Twitter, you will find that there's a lot of infighting. There's a lot. It's not just this like, yeah, we're gonna accept you no matter what. I mean, this guy Jason Lowry wrote a book, Soft War, and I haven't read it, but it's basically on like power. I think it's on power projection. He's MIT space war guy, really smart. But sees Bitcoin as a potential defensive weapon, I think. And a lot of people disagree, and they voice their opinion. It seems like it's maybe 50-50, right? So it isn't just this blind acceptance, like, oh, you're pro-Bitcoin? Like, yeah, get on board. It's like, well, what do you stand for? Who are you? What's between your ears, right? Like there's one of the best macro analysts that is popular in the Bitcoin community, I believe is trans. I don't know because she hasn't said anything and no one really gives a fuck.
What does it matter? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's wrong with society is we're being pushed to worry about these things that are like face deep.
Well, why'd you bring that up? Because is that a real question in the community?
Yeah, it's never been talked about.
Oh, I didn't even, okay.
Like her name's Lynn Alden, and sorry, Lynn, if this goes viral, but it's possible she might be. I'm not 100% sure. But it doesn't matter because she's brilliant.
And she's an author?
She's a hedge fund manager.
I
think, and she's written a number of like long form articles. I don't know if she's written any books, but she's accepted within that community because of her intellect. Period. No one gives a fuck about what color she is, what gender she is, anything.
And what is she writing about?
Macroeconomics, mostly, and energy and a bunch of different stuff. And kind of what she sees happening in the future.
And do your beliefs align with her?
I think she has a lot of interesting ideas. Yeah. And
okay.
I mean, some of her stuff goes over my head, to be honest with you, because it's really in the weeds, and she's I think she really gets into the finance part of it. But yeah, like some of her ideas on energy and her overall philosophy on Bitcoin. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Like we have a bunch of debt. We're constantly inflating. You know, it's pretty much you want to have a store of value that's digital. And I just sound like an idiot saying that, of course.
Well, she's what opened up your. Okay, I get what you're talking about. No, I get it completely because you're kind of opening things up for me where I didn't realize, because that was a question I just thought about right now, was the corruption avenue of Bitcoin, like so the freezing of assets, like that's something that could happen eventually, but right now that is not a thing with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it would never be able to happen if you are holding your own coins, unless you were put under duress and they extracted the keys from you. Because they would have to basically torture you,
right,
or throw you in jail,
or you have all this against you. You have to
put extreme pressure on you.
Yeah.
So, and anything is susceptible to that. But as far as 100 million individuals out there holding their own wealth and not having bank counterparty risk, and it's a pretty powerful thing. And you think right now, because we've had a few bank failures in America, you think, oh, that's pretty cool in America. But when you start thinking about the world, that's when it gets really interesting, right?
Well, dude, the same thing we're talking about government is the same thing I feel about banks. Fuck banks, bro. My whole fucking life. Yeah. Fuck banks, dude. Like, what is it? Like, I've had $10,000 in a savings account for the better part of a year, right? At some point in my life, I got fucking 60 cents. You know what I mean? Like what kind of bullshit's that? You know what I'm talking about? Or the fucking, that's acceptable, right? For us to be like, oh, okay, you can hold my money and you give me 60 cents after fucking not even a year, or almost a year. And then to fucking say, oh, I missed a payment. Give me $50. Like, what kind of bullshit's that?
Yeah.
The whole transaction. And then the other day, I just got a new bank, Cal Coast Credit Union, because Diana has them, my wife. And what happened was I decided, okay, she has always had good experiences with them. She's gotten auto loans to them. They've done fucking 1% loans. They hook it up. Like, cool, great. I'm gonna bank with them. I was with Chase. It burned down. So I decided to try a new bank. So for 3 years I've had them since the bank burned down. And dude, they fucking suck, bro. They literally, and I've talked to them many times about just the fact that they control my money, right? Okay, that's everyone's money. But the fact that there's times when they lock I can't use my debit card. They locked it.
Sure.
They locked it because
it's not your money. It's their money.
Right.
You're loaning it to them. And I'm not saying that, but that's a literal fact.
In their eyes. Yeah.
No, it's not in their eyes. And that's not what a lot of people know. I just want to let you know that, and whoever's watching, that when you put money into a bank, it's not your money anymore. You're loaning it out to them. So if they lose your money,
I get direct deposit. So you're saying that's not my money?
No.
Okay. Please talk.
So this was new to me too. I was like, wait, what?
Okay.
You're FDIC insured up to $250,000, right? So if the bank does lose your money, then the government should come in and recoup those losses via government bonds and treasuries and things, right? That's when it gets interesting, right? Because what happens, Joey? This is the big question, right? What happens when you have your $20,000, $10,000, whatever it is, $100,000 in the bank? You think it's FDIC insured. We find out all the banks are insolvent. No one wants to buy our bonds anymore because we're a failing country in our treasuries. And we have a major financial crisis where your money disappears, just like recently happened to some people that were over the FDIC limit. But let's say that the FDIC can't insure your money for you because the treasuries that back up your money, technically, that they'll use to sell off, are not worth what they should be. And then this is and whoever is a finance person, they're like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You kind of get the gist. I might not have worded it properly, but basically there's treasuries that exist to kind of help with the FDIC, and they have their own investment funds. But it's all part of the same system. That's why I say it's good to have maybe 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% of your Bitcoin if you don't really believe in it that much, or you think the system is fine, just in case, because if the system crumbles within itself, you're going to see a situation where nothing is off the table, right? They'll create a new law. They'll inject money into here and do this in an instant, and they aren't going to ask you or me. They're just going to do it, right?
So wow. Okay.
So that's and because when you start realizing that, okay, my money's in the bank and the bank owns that, and I have this credit card, and I'm sitting here in my living room, and like my whole financial life has counterparty risk associated with this corrupt system, especially the banking system and the banking lobby. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, dude. Three times in the last 3 years, like they've stopped it.
Yeah,
they stopped. I couldn't. They stopped.
And talking.
And I asked them like, why? And I don't know why. What do you mean you don't know why? Can you ask? And they've called people. While I'm standing there, and they can't give me a reason why they have blocked my account 3 times. Yeah,
it might be for fraud stuff,
but it's like, dude, yeah. I've never had that problem with any other bank. Yeah. In the past 25 years I've been banking. I've never had that fucking problem.
Well, think about this, right? I mean, there's made me think about a bunch of stuff. The first, I'm going to bring up something that you mentioned earlier with your savings account only earning like 0.5% on your savings.
Right. Nothing.
So the problem with that isn't this fact that you're earning 0.5% on your savings. It's the fact that your dollars are being worth less and less every single month, right?
That's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Like we talked about that. You put 10,000 in a safe, 10 years, it's not going to be worth 10,000.
It'll be worth maybe half of what it was.
Right.
Purchasing power. And that's what we're talking about, is purchasing power. And then when you're talking about the bank controlling your money and how frustrating that is, well, the good thing about that is if you don't like that bank, you can take your money and place it into another bank. There's competition, right? Which is great. Right. We want competition in industry because it makes a better product for the consumer. But what if there's a major financial crisis, all the banks go bust except the big ones, and the Fed rolls in and says, hey, we have this digital dollar. We have all the money in the world. We can print it even if we need it. We're never going to run out of money. Your money is going to be insured forever. Here's the CBDC. Banks are going to use it. All the banks are going to use it. We've already talked to them. It's all good. And by the way, if you start using your CBDC debit card today, we're going to give you $200 free.
That's the future.
Boom, right? Let's do it.
Right.
Awesome. Great. Average Joe. Fuck yeah. I'm getting $200 and I don't have to worry about losing my money just like I lost my money, in this investment and in this bank, and this local bank went bust and what the fuck. And, well then a few years down the line, you realize that you might not be able to buy a plane ticket because you've been traveling a lot, right? And this CBDC is actually a digital currency that has smart contracts built within it where they can restrict your actual wallet and you don't have control over it. You're hooked up to this centralized system. Or maybe you said the wrong thing on Twitter. Maybe you got up and maybe you're a flat earther and you're starting to gain traction and you have 100,000 followers.
They don't like it. They don't like it.
Right? Maybe you're part of a fucking trucker protest, right? Because you don't want to get a shot that hasn't been tested, right? What did Canada do? They shut down everyone's bank account. So you're starting to see okay, and guess what? Oh, you want to protest and you're part of that organization, that white supremacist, racist, anti-trans,
if they get personal,
whatever they want to call personal, you, right? That you're probably not. Just because you believe something different or you're anti-government, they'll shut you down. And then how are you supposed to travel to Washington, D.C. to protest when your money has been shut off and you can't access it anywhere, right? Because all the stores are using CBDC, so you're shut out of the financial system and you're helpless.
How could you join?
So the government will have total control over you.
Yeah.
So the opposite to that, and why RFK and DeSantis, he's running on the right, and a number of other, and Viswani, the Indian dude that's running for Republican nomination, that's why they're pro-Bitcoin. And that's why everyone should be pro-Bitcoin. Because it represents a decentralized monetary system that cannot be controlled by the US government or the Chinese government or anybody, because the money shouldn't be controlled by any centralized organization, because that gives that centralized organization too much power. And with too much power comes corruption, right? Like, we're all human. We're all fucked up. Like, if I were in control of the money, I don't know what I would do, right? It's kind of like, you don't know. It's ultimate. What is it? Ultimate power corrupts, or ultimate, I forgot whatever that is. But yeah, dude.
So let me ask you. So this is my next thought, just to get your expert opinion on this. So that FTX guy, FTX is like Coinbase. FTX is like its own thing. Yep. Who was the guy? Mark something?
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Sam Bankman. He's the one who wasted all that, uses everyone's money on his own shit, on personal shit.
He misappropriated customer funds. Yes.
And what ended up happening with this situation?
That's funny you asked that. So from what I hear, because there's
did they get their money back? No, people didn't recoup their money.
The people in the U.S. I think are able to recoup their money, but I think a lot of larger investors did not. But then again, I think I heard something that they recovered a bunch of assets. I don't know, but when the initial thing kicked off, it was like billions of dollars are gone.
And he went to jail.
Not yet, but
he's still on trial.
There's a huge conspiracy around him. I don't even want to get into it because it's just too much. Like, it's just, dude, like, so.
Well, my main question is this.
He bought off a bunch of politicians, right? He was trying to enact regulatory control over crypto, which would, of course, benefit himself. He was trying to create a stable coin, which is a synthetic US dollar, which I think is the reason why we're seeing a lot of this pushback against cryptos, because the government doesn't want to lose control of their own currency via the synthetic dollar that can be backed up by their assets. So, yeah, I mean, in one word, dude, it's centralized corruption in one way or another.
I'm bringing this up because I wanted to talk again, because I think we've talked about it last time on the podcast, but I wanted to talk again about, so that's why Bitcoin is so safe, is that we don't know the person who made Bitcoin, who made this coin. So it's more of a there's no one could put pressure on this person to make it more of a to have the potential to be corrupt.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what is this alias's name again?
Satoshi Nakamoto.
And this Satoshi Nakamoto is the alleged creator of Bitcoin, who is he's an
anonymous person. A lot of people have ideas about who he might be, but I don't think anyone really knows. And yes, what you're alluding to is the fact that he is anonymous, and what's even more important than that is that he disappeared shortly after creating Bitcoin. And a problem with a lot of the current and emerging cryptocurrencies is that they're like startups, right? Like, you have to create this crypto. It's difficult. You need developers, you need a team, and you get together and you get funding, and then you sell this token. And by the way, we're going to own this token before we sell it, and we're going to make a fuckload of money. Okay. And that's why Bitcoin is different, because it was this inflection point where you had this underground cryptographic community, not cryptographic, like all these cryptographers on this message board that got together. And this wasn't something new. I think people had tried to create digital cash for a number of years, I think going all the way back to the 80s. But it's very clear that he created this digital currency, and he or she had a very good understanding and was probably a polymath, because the whole proof of work mechanism is very important. I don't want to get too far into it because I'm probably not a lot of Bitcoiners watching this, but yeah. And the fact that he walked away and left it decentralized, because if he came out, right, and let's say, yeah, if they came out and were like, hey, I'm this person, I take all the credit, I'm the man, but it's decentralized, right? Because we all need to use, because there's something called the BIP where everyone needs to agree, all the miners, and even if the miners don't like it, it's very, very hard to make changes within Bitcoin, right? But the reason why Bitcoin is so unique is because if Satoshi Nakamoto made himself public, then and he was extremely influential within the protocol of Bitcoin, that could be a centralized point of attack, right? Mm-hmm. So if I was an intelligence organization, I would compromise him, mm-hmm. right? And they're very good at that. They can do that to probably anyone in the world if they wanted to.
I wonder if whoever this person is.
But there's no central point of attack.
But I wonder who this
developers all around the world. There's even been legal funds that have been started to help developers for people trying to sue them, trying to push a specific agenda. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's why Bitcoin is unique and it's beautiful.
It'd be interesting if that person who started this Bitcoin was part of worked for the government, and that's why they know how to make it.
That is a conspiracy, right? And that's here's the thing: anything's on the table, right?
Like they know how this works, so let's make it this way.
So one of the cool things, and why people aren't afraid of, let's say, like a hacking attack or something like that, is you would have to upgrade the entire Bitcoin network to this new version that you proposed, and it has this loophole in it, right? So let's say that there was, and it's very difficult, but let's just say that there was someone that was able to manipulate a number of developers and get it through the BIP process, and everyone thought it was going to be positive for Bitcoin, and it ended up going through, and there was some kind of vulnerability in it, right? Well, everyone would just revert back to the old software, right?
Right.
So, and it's a tenuous process when a major change comes up in Bitcoin. But I don't want to go too far into this because I'm not part of the core development team, and but from what I understand, it's extremely difficult. And also to attack it from a proof of work standpoint is also very difficult. But yeah, it's basically uncorruptible at this point in time.
That's intense. I never. When you told me that, I was like, "What?" And I was reading about it after that. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's a revolution, right? It's like it's a revolutionary technology because you have this thing, this protocol, this technology that people can use that no one else can control. And I know that sounds like, wait, and then you think about it, you're like, wait, hold on, like there's other things that people can control, like this, and this, but outside of like nature and physics, everything can be manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like any company, any product.
Oh yeah.
Anything. Yeah. Any system, any institution.
Trying to think of a really good example.
Any currency.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have that source of truth, and this is why people get spiritual about Bitcoin, is because, wow, so this thing, it's this very, not simple, but I mean, compared to some technology, I suppose it's simple technology that all it does is a very simple mechanism, but no matter what, if any asshole corporation, evil country, if you want to think of a country as evil, or anyone that wants to change it and manipulate it and profit from that or hurt other people, they can't do it because it's incorruptible, right? It's this decentralized source of truth. And then from that source, because we're lacking truth, we just talked about all the corruption and the lies and everything that we've been told, especially over COVID and through the years of JFK, right?
From our government specifically.
Yeah, from our government and what we've accepted into society. And there's so many things wrong.
Right. Oh, yeah. Our history is all fucked up.
Yeah. And like that's what like a lot of Bitcoiners
we're barely dealing with slavery. It's like Jesus Christ.
Like, humans are fucked up, and it's okay because like we know it, Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm flawed. I do fucked up shit. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
We all are. And it's okay. But if you have a system that you can base your monetary system on that isn't flawed, that isn't run by a human, right, that can't be corrupted, why don't you want to move to that system? And the reason why...
People don't know.
But yeah, exactly. They don't know, and they're being fed a bunch of narratives by people that want the existing system to continue because they benefit from that system.
Or they just...
And that's kind of what we're dealing with.
They're just going with the flow. Or they're just going with the flow. They know, but they just going with the flow.
Yeah, I'm talking about like whoever's opposing it. But like the average person, like you or one of your coworkers,
opposing
one of your coworkers,
gotcha.
They're probably just like, oh, that seems like a...
I see what I thought you were talking about something else. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I know.
And I don't blame them because
I know a lot of old people who are
in crypto.
I know a lot of old people who think crypto is a scam because they just don't understand it. They're just so it's above them, or they don't.
Yeah.
Not to be rude, it's not above them. That's not the right thing to say, but it's their they're not. It's not part of their world. They're not used to it. They don't know it.
Yeah, like I think what happens with older people is
They're unfamiliar.
they get kind of narrow-minded.
Definitely, that's a perfect way to put it.
They want to kind of, especially when they're investing money in something. Like I have a pretty wealthy uncle-in-law, and I tried to orange pill him and talk to him about Bitcoin, and he said something that's very important, even for young people and whoever wants to invest their money. And I thought about it, and it's like, it's not profound, but it's a rule which you should live by. Is, never invest in something that you don't understand. Right.
Definitely.
And if you are looking to invest into Bitcoin, what I would recommend is, even if you're excited about it and you're like, oh, this is the next big thing and I'm going to get rich, blah, 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 blah. Be honest with yourself and say, what's the percent chance that Bitcoin is worth more than it is today in 20 years? And if you think that's a slim chance because you think the government's going to come in and regulate it and shut it down and kill it forever all around the world, then maybe you invest 1%. Or maybe you think it's a scam and you think it's bullshit and you don't want to invest anything, then don't invest anything. But what I would ask of you to do is just educate yourself a little bit, because that's what we've been talking about this whole podcast, is educating yourself. We watched that video. Remember, so there was a campaign. If we can put this video in the comments. And part of the whole pandemic campaign and
what video?
Anti-vax, the one that we watched with.
Oh, I'll play it in the beginning.
Yeah. So like what cool?
Play it in the beginning.
What you saw from that was the government and mainstream media outlets telling you that doing your own research is absurd.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do your own research. You're not a scientist. You're not an economist.
Yeah.
We have specialists, right? And that might be the case for a lot of things, but I think you should educate yourself and you should have your own opinion, right? You work all your life for dollars, and if you just held dollars your entire life, you wouldn't be able to retire, most likely, depending on how much money you make and all that. Because over the course of, 50, 60 years, you would have probably 10 to 20% of your purchasing power. That's why you have to invest in the stock market. And that's why we have this huge banking financial system built around gambling and moving money into stocks and speculative investments, because our currency won't hold value over time. So what that does to the underlying society is it creates kind of a gambling, kind of unhealthy idea of what it takes to succeed. Because in a gold standard or in a Bitcoin standard, a person that made a moderate amount of money would be able to take their money and save it into Bitcoin or gold over long term, if gold wasn't compromised like it is now,
right,
papered over, and they would be able to live a nice life and not have to worry about gambling in the stock market and playing this risk game that has been forced on us by fiat currency.
Yeah. Another one? Good?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. But so what's the safest way to put money into Bitcoin, yeah, but Bitcoin goes up and down. Is there anything that's safe like Bitcoin?
Best thing you can do is take some money every week, maybe every month, and just buy a little bit over time. Because the first thing you're going to want to do, especially that I wanted to do when I first started investing, was I thought I was smarter than the market. I thought I would be able to have a unique view inside of the stock market or this stock or this technology or even Bitcoin when I first started investing. And you'll soon find out, unless you really want to turn into a trader and spend your life trying to trade, just dollar cost average, just buy a little bit over time. And what that'll do is, if the stock goes down quite a bit, you'll still be just buying a little bit. If the stock goes up quite a bit, you'll still be just buying a little bit. And then over time, your cumulative price will be positive if Bitcoin is successful in the long term, right? So just, that's the best way. DCA, dollar cost average, and make sure that you aren't holding too much Bitcoin on a centralized exchange or centralized app. That's it. And just hold on to it. Don't think about it of like, what's it going to be in 6 months? if you have the ability, and this also comes into the education piece, if you have the ability to hold on to it for, the next 8 to 10 to maybe 15 years, if you can, just put it away. Don't just forget about it. Like your 401k.
You said, don't hold too much on something that's centralized. What would you consider being too much? Like what's the,
So that's a personal question, right? So like $10,000
for the average person, like not what would you recommend? Like where would it go? Okay.
So
boom.
I can't give that answer because if there's someone that makes $30,000 a year, $500 might be a lot of money to them. If there's someone that makes $150,000 a year, $500 might be, I'll just leave it on the exchange.
When it becomes, basically what you're saying is when it becomes a point where it becomes a lot of money to you, if you have personally,
attachment,
get it out of there.
Yeah.
Got you.
Absolutely.
Put it onto a non-centralized.
Put it onto
decentralized
a hardware wallet.
Hardware wallet. Got you.
That you own, that you create the key for, that's yours.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of tutorials you can look at to learn how to properly store Bitcoin. It's not that hard. You just need to take the time to do it. And that's another thing that is important within Bitcoin is like ownership, like self-sovereignty, like taking that responsibility and accepting that responsibility that it's your money and not being lazy and just being like, I'll just let you take care of it. It's like, no, that's my money. That's what I worked for. I want to own it. I want to take control of it. I want to have, the ability to leave the country or take my money wherever I want to, whenever I want to. Fuck you.
Well, one of the things that like we've been talking about, it's like a theme of this whole fucking podcast is like people don't know this. Like I didn't know that the bank owns your money.
Yep.
So so like right now, let's say today, I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with that statement and that realistic, situation. So what do? Go out and take all my money out and put it somewhere that I want to put it?
Well,
because I can't, if something goes down tomorrow, I can't touch on any of that.
No, you can't. And my idea is that I have Bitcoin, which is outside of the system. So if the system, and I'm talking about the system, I say the financial system crumbles, which it might, because we're at all-time high debt levels. Every bank is fractionally reserved up to the tits. Then you have, so like if that happens, and this is only a thesis or this is only a theory, Bitcoin is going to become very valuable.
Right.
Because it's outside of the system and people are going to be like, I don't trust the system anymore, which they shouldn't have already. And they're going to be like, I need to allocate towards this asset.
Right.
And then that asset will go up in value and hopefully it will recoup the money that you might have lost in a stock, or if you have over $250,000 and it's not insured, or if the shit really hits the fan and FDIC isn't able to insure that money, which is a high probability in the case of a financial crash now, because we have emerging geopolitical global issues happening where countries might not want to buy our treasuries anymore. Right? So yeah, is
that what's happening with China buying corn from Africa?
It's complicated, dude. China's doing a bunch of geopolitical stuff right now that we've kind of been sleeping on, but the geopolitics stuff is a whole rigmarole in its own, and I follow some of it, but all I can say is Peter Zehan is a fucking idiot.
Who's
he's
that?
Like this. I think he's.
Who's that?
He's this geopolitical analyst that went on Joe Rogan and talked about how, and he's so confident in what he says. And by the way, everything that I've said, I could be wrong, by the way. And he's just, Bitcoin is not worth anything. And
he's against Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, but this is the thing though, is the argument that he made for being against Bitcoin is kind of laughable because they're like kind of Bitcoin 101 questions. But I think he's clearly tied to the US government in some way. I'm not sure where or how, but he talks about population decline, which is another legitimate issue.
Who is this guy? Like, what is he about? He's from China?
I don't know, dude. He's an American. He works for a think tank, which is probably tied to intelligence, and he's propagating ideas that China is going to go under because they're having a major population decline over the next 50 years and blah, 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 blah. But the bottom line is he doesn't know that, and nobody knows that because we've never had a major population decline on Earth ever in the history of mankind that we know of. So Peter Zehan, if you're listening, you need to be a little more humble and I think you're an asshole. Quite frankly, I hate like pompous people that
in your face
that they know
Zion.
everything. Yeah, Peter Zion, you fuckhead.
In your face, Peter Zion. I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, dude. But he's. I personally think he's a shill for intelligence, and he's
okay.
He's just a douchebag. But anyways,
I need to watch that because I don't even know what you're talking about. But I mean, it sounds interesting because when you first presented this guy, I thought he was a fucking like a Chinese guy talking about Chinese. So he's an American who's an expert on Chinese culture.
He's like a geopolitical.
Oh, okay.
And he also recently made a statement that. So what happened in El Salvador is they legalized Bitcoin back in 2021, I believe. 2021, yeah. And they've recently, so the leaders kind of, he's shifting things up. And, you know, MS-13, right, is a huge issue in El Salvador, right? Like, it's impairing their economy. That's where it started, right? Yeah.
That's where it started?
Yeah, all the small businesses have to pay a VIG to these gangs. And
it's that big out there.
Yeah.
Still?
So the Bukele basically said, fuck this, rounded up everybody. If you had an MS-13 tattoo on your forehead, you're getting thrown in jail. And I can understand from a human rights perspective, people are irritated. But for a everyday citizen living in El Salvador, it's the best thing he could have done, in my opinion. Because their GDP, I think, is up almost 10%. And he's basically built prisons to throw these gang members in, and he's eradicated crime. I think they went upwards of 100 days maybe without a single murder in the entire country. Right? This is one of the murderous countries per capita in the entire world. Right? So I would rather lock up all the people with gang tattoos and have people not getting murdered than worry about giving them civil liberties, especially if you're in a small country and you know what the threat is. Right? But it's questionable, right? But it is in America. It's not the same thing. They don't have a constitution, but he's taking action, and he wants to build a prosperous nation for his people, right? Because like I talked about before with the IMF and these predatory loans, is that they're trying to basically push the dollar out of their system and become kind of a Bitcoin standard country. Because also what happens with a lot of these third world countries that have a lot of dollars flowing through their financial system is they get inflation exported onto them. Because what happens is, like in COVID, when we printed 6 trillion, 4 trillion, I don't remember, trillions of dollars, that money flowed back, and you got the $2,000 check maybe, that money went back into our system. But what about El Salvador? What about these other countries that operate in dollars? Because they were based on a dollar standard, or they are based on a dollar standard.
Right.
Their inflation goes through the roof, but they didn't benefit from any of that printing.
So they don't get any checks.
So we exported that inflation out onto them, right?
Okay.
So
how does that look on their end?
It sucks.
Everything goes up?
Yeah, prices are going to go up, right? Because if everything is denominated in the dollar, if energy especially is denominated in the dollar, which the majority of it is right now, then yeah, they're going to have to pay more for gas and everything, right? Food, you name it.
Honey. Honey.
Do you know who Oliver Tree is?
Yeah, actually, I found him during COVID. He's an interesting dude because he had that thing with the where he was the cowboy. He had that weird haircut. Yeah, it's hilarious. I was like, who the fuck is this guy?
I saw him on Bobby Lee's podcast.
Yeah, I think I saw that one a long time ago.
I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was weird. My son, dude, fucking loves his music.
Really?
I didn't even. He just like because I didn't know. He watches he watches like TikTok videos. He swipes up, and like you could pick like I don't know if you are you familiar with TikTok at all?
No, I've never used it.
You never use TikTok? Okay, it's like Instagram, but it's way more convenient. Just in the way of like filters or like going back to things you've saved and liked. It's so much easier to access that shit. It's like it's not like Instagram. It's like you have to go to this fucking
setting.
You know what I'm talking about? Oh, it's a bitch. And they always change it. Like I've been with Instagram since they opened, like, or at least 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. So I've been fucking with Instagram. Anyways, my son gets on TikTok and like we look at videos, but there's a way to like go and like pick like the song they're using and see all the videos they made from that song. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know, like he does that, and he just I hear this song, the TikTok trend music all the time because he's just watching these dumb videos of this. There's a Lady Gaga song that's trending right now because of that Wednesday. You ever heard of the show Wednesday?
Oh yeah, with the Addams Family.
Right. It's she's dancing to this in one of the episodes. She's dancing to this Lady Gaga song.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard it.
So that song,
I've heard the creep or the
that song's trending on TikTok.
Okay.
So that song is like it's sped up though. The trending version is like a sped up version, but it's like crazy shit like that. It's like okay, it's a sped up version of Lady Gaga song, but there's like all these TikTok videos from that song because of that Wednesday show. But there's a lot of Oliver Tree songs that they use just on fucking random TikTok videos that I've heard. I didn't know who it was until now. My son watches them on YouTube. He watches his videos on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, this is that guy on the Bobby Lee podcast. So I see him all the time.
Yeah.
And anyways, my point is I got the song stuck in my head. That's why.
No, yeah. Because I saw him, I got interested in him because Bobby Lee did a thing on his Instagram when I used to have an Instagram account during COVID. And he like bumped into him. And like Oliver Tree like goes up and pushes him and like almost gets in a fight with him. And he's got the weird haircut, like the cowboy haircut.
Right.
Like, and it looked real, right? And he said Oliver Tree's an asshole, blah, blah, blah. But it was fake.
Right.
But it looked real.
Right.
I think that's what he does sometimes is like start fake fights.
That's how it started. Did you see the podcast?
I did, yeah.
So that was like the whole thing was
He's
fake.
like, I'll get up and get
the
out of here
whole thing
now,
was fake. But it was like okay, I get it, but it was like it kind of went too far sometimes. I'm like, what's happening
that's
right
his
now?
stick is like he wants you to not know what's real and what isn't.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But he's an interesting dude. And like I find it interesting that he's caught so much like he's on TikTok and everything. That's because he seems kind of like a fringe artist,
right?
You know?
Right. No, and that's the thing is I've heard of him, I've seen him, and I remember he's going to come. A couple of friends of mine were like, or a couple of coworkers of mine were like, he's coming to San Diego. They're all excited to see him, and he canceled. And they're all bummed out.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, I'm aware of who he is because I've seen him on a podcast here and there. You know, I saw him on H3 as well.
H3, yeah, I think I
saw him on there as well
because I googled him a few times, and his music's not bad. His music,
and that's cool. The thing too. I'm very shocked about it. It doesn't sound like him. Like it doesn't. Like from what I've heard what I've heard his voice on the podcast. I couldn't believe that was him. I was like, oh, this is the guy. That's crazy. It was cool and interesting. But yeah, my son loves this fucking guy, Oliver Tree. It's crazy, and it's kind of annoying.
And even his name, Oliver Tree. You know,
there's a song called "Miss You."
Okay.
I bet you've heard it before.
Oh,
I mean, if you haven't, you will. Many times over.
I'm sure I have, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Anyways, can we talk about NFTs? Just more of like a guide to someone's guide to NFTs because that was a fucking thing, dude. Like there's things like people getting sued, like Kevin Hart, Justin Bieber, Jimmy Fallon. You hear about that lawsuit?
Oh yeah,
they're getting sued.
It's all from the Bored Ape Meta win or Bored Ape
Yacht Club.
Yeah, but they were basically the celebrities weren't really buying them; they were just giving them to them and having them advertise.
Right. Oh, that's.
And it was caught up between this other crypto company, but yeah, like that's a prime example. Okay, yeah. So I will talk about it a little bit. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to give crypto or because I used to be into NFTs. When we talked last time, for you, if you want to go back to that episode, I had a different perspective on crypto. I was very much into Bitcoin, and that's the majority of what I was passionate about at the time. But I was also trying to make money in NFTs, and I think it's a cool technology. But again, what I said earlier, if you have any kind of data that you want to utilize in the blockchain, you want to put it on the best uncensorable technology, and that's Bitcoin. It's on Ethereum. They've recently gone proof of stake. They have an Ethereum foundation. NFTs, I think, are interesting. I think there is some opportunity to do some cool stuff in gaming. We had talked about gaming before.
Mm-hmm.
I think to bridge the economy from games to real life might be cool, but the idea of a metaverse and this whole idea that all of these gaming companies and are just going to build on this open standard together when they can build their own closed-in standard and break in a ton of money and not have to adapt to an external factor, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think they could implement a currency to pay for stuff. But again, like if you look at Steam and you look at all of these different gaming manufacturers, it's kind of questionable. I heard that GTA is going to be implementing like blockchain or a GTA 6.
Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah. But I don't, because the thing is 99.99% of everything that you see on CoinMarketCap or every other crypto bullshit that you see out there is probably a scam. And you're probably too late by the time you see it. And you are the exit liquidity. Just FYI. If you want to gamble and you want to be a degenerate, that's fine. I do degenerate things every once in a while. I like to gamble on stuff every once in a while. And that's what I would, if you want to gamble, go into crypto. If you want a long-term store of value and savings, buy a little Bitcoin. That would be my recommendation. If you like NFTs, go buy NFTs. I don't give a shit. I wouldn't buy them. But
so I said like 10 more minutes to wrap this up. It's been like 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting kind of hungry. It's up to you though. You want to keep going?
We can keep going. Doesn't matter.
Because I'm kind of getting hungry.
No, yeah. Let's go get some food.
So, NFTs, Bitcoin, the blockchain. Yeah, we did talk about fucking. I get into these predicaments lately where I'm kind of starting to see where I'm at in my life, and I talk to a lot of intellectuals like you, like people who are like college educated. And I forget that I'm not. I don't fucking.
I'm barely college educated, dude. I got my degree when I was in the military.
Where did you graduate, and what was your degree?
It's like a bullshit technical degree for network security.
But what is your major?
It was network security.
Like, so network security. Yeah. Okay.
It was like a DeVry. It was called ECPI. It was on the East Coast. You could do a accelerated program where you could get your degree in like 2.5 years.
But you got your master's or your bachelor's?
Just my bachelor's, while I was full time in the military. And
it doesn't matter, man. There's a definite difference when I talk to someone with a bachelor's degree.
Really?
Oh fuck yeah!
No.
And there's a difference when it comes to, like, for example, like right now, everything that you do, everything that you let's say you want to put it into paper and write. Like you said, you want to write a book. You tell me that, right? You want to write like a book. I was
thinking about it, yeah.
Dude, you would get published because you are an intellectual.
See, I'm not a very good writer.
I couldn't.
I couldn't.
If I wrote a book, that's why I'm doing the podcast, because this is like a poor man's.
That's why I like doing podcasts.
No, I'm just saying this is I can't write a book.
I can't either.
I would. No,
fucking hard.
You have more credentials when it comes to like you would be more. Like if me and you both wrote a book and you put it out there, they would pick yours more than mine because you have a degree and you have something to talk about. You know,
I think you have to be passionate about what you write about, you know?
Right. That's my perspective. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. But I've noticed that, like, a lot of my friends, they're college educated and they're fucking like.
But I'm not though, dude. And the thing is, like, because I take issue with that because I work with a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of people, and I currently.
I don't mean disrespect.
No,
I mean that what you're saying, everything you're saying,
you're like giving me a compliment. I appreciate it, but I'm gonna give you a flip side. I've worked with a lot of people that have gone to prestigious universities, and let me tell you something. I understand what you're saying, like on a baseline level. Of if you can get through a Ivy League school, like you're probably pretty sharp. But as far as intellectual ability, I don't think that has anything to do with what college you went to, because I think that intellectual ability, and it's really like the ability to like question things and be curious, right, and dig into those things.
But my thing is, like, if you had a podcast and you were talking to somebody like me versus someone who has their doctorate. Mm-hmm. You could see a difference.
They would be more professional.
You see a difference.
Yeah,
like it's like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It's like, and then you'll feel your DeVry. You know what I mean? Like you'll feel it. Like, it'll humble you.
Though, you might
it'll
not,
humble
though,
you.
Right? And what I'm saying is, like, you shouldn't judge people based on.
And I'm not saying like I can't compete with you when it comes to conversations. I'm just saying is I definitely see the gap. Like I'm like, oh, I could tell you're college educated because you really you go into places that aren't the average.
But I didn't really do any college.
You did. You got your fucking.
But
you
dude,
got
night school. It was
but you got your bachelor's. I didn't. Like, you know what I mean?
But what I'm telling you is, don't think like that.
Okay.
Because one of the smartest people I know didn't even get his fucking GED. It's one of my friends' older brothers that is like a CTO of a company in London and was a hacker when he was 16. He's one of the smartest people I know and didn't really go through the standard educational process. And just to pile on top of that and to kind of give you a counter argument towards that, I think what you're talking about is being well read, right? Yeah. I think you can achieve that if you start reading some books, you start listening to some different podcasts, because that will seep into your brain and you'll talk differently. Like I probably talk similar because I watch a lot of finance stuff. I watch a lot of science stuff. So I think that seeped into my brain. But I think the inverse, actually. I think a lot of people that are college educated, especially if you go past a bachelor's degree and you get up into the academia as like that's your kind of like way that you're going to go and you're going to base your career off that after a number of years. I think you're kind of indoctrinated into this weird structured way of thinking. And it might sound very intellectual at times, but I think a lot of those people are fucking idiots. And they're posing as intellectuals based on sounding smart or whatever. And I can't fucking stand those people.
Who's that guy, that politician who's always lying and always proving him wrong?
Oh, was it the
it's
Sanchez guy?
It's like a Hispanic guy.
It's like cringy, and that's a prime example of our system.
Yeah. Who is you know what I'm talking about?
George,
I forget his name, but
George Lopez.
What was he lying about? He lied about a bunch of shit.
He lied about his education, his career, everything. Yeah.
I wish I knew his name. Would be put on blast.
Okay, so there's a prime example.
Put him on blast right now.
That's why you shouldn't think about that, because he used those credentials to
get up,
glaze over people's eyes,
right,
and be like, "Oh yeah, he's college educated. He went to this. He knows this person. He's good."
That's probably why he got where he's at.
Yeah, that's why I love the Bitcoin community so much. Is because we don't give a fuck where you're from, what college you went to. What are you saying? Does it make sense? Like, who are you as a person?
Right.
And that's what's important, right? I mean, that's really like all of these social structures that we've built up around education, especially today when we have so much information at our fingertips. One of the biggest Bitcoiners out there, Michael Saylor, he has a strong belief that education should be free for everyone. And why shouldn't it? And I believe in that too. Like when you think about it, we live in the age of information. You can easily access the same information if given access to the information of a Harvard graduate. Like you could go through the same courses and you could learn the same information and you could operate at the same level that person is with that degree, right? But we've gated off these prestigious titles and you can only a certain amount of people can get into this university and blah, 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 blah. When in reality, there's so much, like he says it, like untapped talent throughout the world that just don't have access and don't have the resources. Right. And that's the real crime.
Right.
You know?
I believe that.
And there's a lot of people that don't give a fuck and that's fine. And like, it takes everybody to create a society, but the people that want to get ahead and have the desire to, but can't based on their opportunity, that's wrong, you know? And then we can get into like, basis of opportunity versus outcome and, or equality of opportunity versus outcome. I obviously believe in equality of opportunity. And I think a lot of what is being pushed in the world right now is equality of outcome, meaning we should all be the same. And that's bullshit. And I know we're wrapping up. That's something we could talk about next time. But the idea that like we're all the same and like we all need to conform.
We can talk about it.
It's just like, so what you've seen pushed in mainstream media with this whole BLM movement and LGBTQIA plus M456 is the idea, and this is like the underlying idea that's dangerous. I'm not against obviously black people or LGBT or anything like that, but the framework of ideas that are pushing those things and trying to slip in little gotchas, that's dangerous, right? So one of the things behind that I mentioned earlier, equality of outcome. And what that is, it's the idea that we can all be equal. And that sounds really good, right?
Sounds like communism.
Yeah, there you go. And Marxism and all the rest.
Right.
And Unfortunately,
the way when it comes to like school, like kids, it's the same thing as what I'm talking about. As when we're kids, they teach you about Thanksgiving, they teach you about everyone should be created equal. But when you get out in the real world, that's not the case. That shouldn't be the case.
That's not reality.
Because if everyone was treated equal, that's communism.
Yeah,
basically. I mean, and that's an old word for it. What's it now? It's a new word for it, or it's kind of like
they're calling it like Marxism now. I think
Marxism, but there's another word. It's something ism. But anyways, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So like, and
Sorry.
that's like the thing that I object against the most is we need to be adults and we need to understand that everyone's experience on life is during their life is not going to be equal, and it will never be equal, no matter how much we try to like even those lines. The only thing that we can do, in my opinion, that will make the world a better place is give more opportunity for people that want to succeed. And if we aren't doing that, then like that's the problem, right? Because
and we'll just to clarify, we mean like I'm assuming you mean what I mean is everyone not being treated equally, not racist wise, but like as in economic wise.
So let me give you an example of equality of outcome. Okay, I'll give you a prime example. In Harvard, they made it more difficult for Asian Americans to get accepted into Harvard because there are too many of them.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to chop the legs off you because of your race. Oh, you grew up in Chinatown in LA in poverty and your parents fucking owned a Korean chicken place and you guys barely made it through, but they were strict with you and they made you bust your ass during school and they worked extra hours. But you're Korean, therefore you're Asian, didn't make the score. This other person that's white or black or Latino, they're getting in over you. That's wrong. And that was the idea behind, that is the idea behind a lot of, or I don't know if it's still being pushed, but that's the idea behind a lot of this stuff. And, it's wrong.
And we talked about this. We talked about like people, and I'm bringing up race because I don't want people to think that we're talking about being treated equally because of race. If that's something that should be normal.
Absolutely.
And by, what you believe in, what your sexuality is.
Based on the content of your character.
But we're talking about like when it comes to financial, like people like we're talking about, there's a class war. People act like it's a race war.
Yes.
It's a class war.
Yeah. And that ties directly into Bitcoin, right? And that's another thing that we were talking about before is they're distracting you from what's really going on and the real egregious acts that are taking place. And it has nothing to, I'm going to say that has nothing to do with race, but that's what they made you think that everything, all the problems had to do with race.
Right.
And I don't think, I think the main problem within American society, at least, is that we're seeing this major wealth divide and people, their lives are getting harder. Their opportunities aren't what they used to be. And they're pissed off. And the media is giving them a perfect outlet to be pissed off at these people over here. And that's perfect for the major corporations and the people that are actually want to pull the strings and profit because, oh, you aren't paying attention? Well, let's just go ahead and do this real quick. And if anybody talks back against it, let's call them racist.
Right.
And then the conversation will be about racism, right? I recently just watched this great little short on breaking points, and we can link it in here. I really want people to see it. It's about the obesity in the United States, and in 2023 on January 1st, when everybody, I'm regurgitating some of the video, but when everybody's getting ready to lose weight and sleep more and do everything naturally that you need to do to like lose weight and feel better as a human and like prosper and be successful in life, you have a very respected doctor from like Stanford, and she has all the credentials, right? And she goes on and she says that if you're obese, it's because of a genetic disorder. And guess what? You can take this injection once a week and you'll lose like 15 to 20% of your body weight. And he does a nice expose on the pharmaceutical industry in conjunction with the food industry and how it's not necessarily driven by evil, but it's driven by profit. It's driven by greed. And then they're able to introduce these ideas that, because we have 50% obesity rate in the US right now. Okay. In the 1950s, it was almost 0%. So the guy rightly says in the video, so what has happened genetically in the last, 70 years? Like, that's like one lifetime, not even. And you're saying that we're all genetically
Changed?
modified?
Yeah.
It's a lie. It's a lie. And, it's a huge problem. I mean, it just ties into everything we've been talking about.
The cheapest food is the worst.
Yeah, because it has a long shelf life.
Yeah,
and they can produce it and have it sit in the store.
The impoverished are going to buy the cheap food.
Yep. But there's and he also goes into like the fact that like if you are producing a product, then sugar, I mean, it's pretty much like a drug. And if you do induce more sugar into your product, it will probably sell better because we're so sugared up too. Like the average individual, I know I have an addiction to sugar. And I guess my takeaway from this, I'm going totally left field, but sugar is a drug just like anything else. And you really need to look at it that way.
That's true. Yeah. Caffeine is a drug. People don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
And sugar, caffeine, those are like the ones that as a kid, it was normal for me to ingest. It was normal. Like I can't even remember the first time I drank a fucking Coke or drink a soda. My son, like I'm trying to keep him away from that stuff, just kind of like make it better for him. But no, that's something that I've realized. Caffeine, I can't even remember. I tried going off caffeine like a year ago or something like that. I tried taking like a month off. It was fucking hard. Like it really hurts. Like it hurts me. Yeah. My body to fucking take a month off of caffeine.
But like
that's real shit. Sugar, I'm sure it's the same thing.
Yeah, and the thing is that you have these people that are trusted, right? They're in these prestigious universities and they have all the credentials, just like you're saying earlier, right? With people that are college educated, and everyone assumes that they're good people too.
Right.
But a lot of these experts, it's just you have to do your own research. You have to really kind of wake up and make the decision for yourself and take control over what you eat, and also more importantly what you think. Like that is so important. And if it's not in conjunction with the people around you, that's fine. They're not going to hate you. Just it's fine. It's just, I think a lot of people are worried about peer pressure and all that, especially during COVID, but I don't know, man.
I don't know either.
Yeah. Something has to change. That's evident, because if we keep going down the same route that we're going down, I feel like it's going to be real bad in like 30 years, right? And then your kids, I mean, and the next generation, it's scary.
Yeah.
On a positive note, we can fight back. And that's through educating yourself and, not ingesting, and just educate yourself. Information is power, and don't always question authority. I think information is power, and always question authority. You'll be fine. Those are two things everybody should do, right? Definitely. Everybody should believe in.
Definitely. What's your favorite song of all time?
There's no real deep meaning to it. I just love the song because it makes me feel like I want to fucking get going. Is Hybrid Moments by the Misfits.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good fucking song.
I love that song. Yeah, that's one of my faves. Like if I had to like put on if you told me to put on my favorite song right now, it'd be
is it if you want to scream with me?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Moments like this never.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard the song. But yeah, it's my favorite song.
Yeah. Fuck. That's a good song. Favorite fast food restaurant?
In-N-Out.
Worst fast food restaurant?
Wiener Schnitzel.
If you had one ability, one magic power, one superpower, what would it be? Like flying, reading people's minds, going through walls, anything.
I don't know if this is mine, but I recently watched a Michael Saylor. He's a huge Bitcoiner and thought leader in the space. And he made a really good point. To be invincible. That's the best superpower you could ever have.
And you'd want that.
Yeah.
nothing could touch you.
Yeah, because you would have the ability to extract yourself
Like physically.
from everything. Yeah, like if they couldn't see you, like you could do whatever you wanted to do. Like whatever you wanted to do, you could do.
That's true.
Technically.
That's true. Wow, that's a good one, dude.
Yeah.
People have said like stop time. That's a really good one.
And I stole it from him.
That's
But
like the
I was listening, I was like,
that's like the ultimate.
damn, that's pretty. He was doing he was like explaining some point, and then he kind of shifted to that.
Does that
and I was
mean
like,
you live
that-
forever?
No, I wouldn't live forever. I don't know if I would want to live forever.
But I'm saying, if you're invincible, does that mean you live forever?
I don't think so.
Maybe you just die of your old age.
Yeah, but you live a good life, and I think what makes life good is
physically,
that-
nothing could
yeah.
touch you. Physically,
Well, no, not necessarily that it couldn't touch you. You could just disappear, right?
Whoa, what?
Okay, so I think his idea, and I was like watching this while I was cooking dinner, and it made a lot of sense. So basically, like if you're say you're the fastest person in the world, right? Okay, that's cool, but they would be able to probably figure out a way. Like, let's say the government's like your Flash. Like, this motherfucker's running around everybody. He's killing it. He's killing people on the street. We got to regulate him. Like, this is bullshit, right?
I don't think they could ever catch me.
Well, what if they found a way? What if they sectioned off certain streets and built walls?
They catch me. They find a way.
Yeah, like what if you were the strongest person? You were like Hulk, or basically, I think if I remember correctly, what he said is whatever superpower that you project to the world that the world knows about. Obviously, right? It's this weird anomaly. They're probably going to I don't know if he said this, but I just thought about this right now. They're probably going to reject it because you're so superior, and they're going to want to bring you down. They're going to be like, fuck this guy. He's too fast. He's breaking all the laws. He needs to live like everybody else, right? Quality of outcome. Well, if you're invincible, no one can tell unless like you're with your wife and you just disappear. And even if you're in a crowded public and you disappear, did they know what you look like? Or maybe they could get you on camera. Maybe I suppose they could do facial recognition, but I don't think it would be very difficult to be like, oh yeah, I saw this guy and he disappeared. Yeah, you're out of your fucking mind. Right? So if you were invincible, and then you could do anything you wanted to do. You could do good things too. Like, no, I'm not talking about bad things.
Invisible?
Invisible, yeah.
Oh, invisible. They said invincible.
No, sorry. I probably was saying invincible. I mean invisible.
Like disappear. I thought you meant invincible. Like you can't, like physically, I cannot die. Like hurt.
Yeah, I know. Because that's why you said the immortal thing. I was like, no, I don't think I would be immortal. People couldn't see me.
I thought you meant invincible. Like
no,
nothing can penetrate your body.
No.
Like you can't get squished by any machinery. Like you're just.
Yeah. No, I get
it.
I would want to be invisible. I mean, I would take any superpower.
Disappear. Yeah. Got you.
Yeah.
Oh, invincible's a good one though. You just open the mind to that. Like even if they caught you, like you can't die.
But that would be kind of bored though. Because I think what would happen with me is if I was invincible, I would probably like just test every limit. You know?
But that's the fun part.
No, but then I would get bored. Because then I would reach like, okay, I've done everything.
But the only thing that can kill you is old age. That'd be crazy, bro. Like I would live my life to the fullest. I'd be like walking in front of cars. I don't give a fuck. I'm invincible. You can't fucking break me.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I thought you meant.
I mean, that would be cool.
Like I fall from a plane. Like I'm gonna fucking land.
That would be cool too.
I'm be okay.
But the thing is, no, that wouldn't be cool though, because I guess because you would still have vulnerability in your mind. You just wouldn't have physical vulnerability. Well, I think you need to be vulnerable to something.
Cancer could kill you.
Because absolute power corrupts.
Cancer could kill you.
No, because so I'll give you something that ties into our conversation, right? So like if you were invincible and you could never die, and you had absolute power corrupts. So you'd probably become this horrible fucking person. Do you watch Homelander? Do you watch The Boys?
No, but I can imagine what you're talking about.
It's awesome.
I know the concept, so I can imagine that I think it hurts you. You just become like you do anything you want.
Exactly.
Become like a fucking GTA character. Just like you just
that's
fucking doing anything, stealing tanks.
Yep. Yeah.
Fucking the world up.
Yeah. Fucking doing whatever the fuck you want to do. And there's this really good show on Amazon. It's called The Boys. I've only watched the first 2 seasons, but the head, because they have this like, it's like a super world, it's like kind of like X-Men deal, but it's real life where these people are flawed. Like the superheroes are flawed and they're kind of fucked up.
Yeah. Right? I know the concept. Yeah. I know the plot.
Okay.
They're real. Like, if they're real.
Yeah.
And like they're fucking up our world. Like
Homelander.
our people. Yeah. Yeah.
Homelander is he's this all powerful, like he's invincible basically. He's super strong, stronger than everybody, fucking everything you could possibly imagine. He has laser eyes and he's an asshole, right? He's a horrible, horrible person, right? And I think, you know, it's like, it brings me back to like the Marcus Aurelius, like his meditations and stuff, in that he was the most powerful man in the world and he could have done everything that Homelander did or does in the show. But he realizes that he needs to be like one with nature and he needs to basically kind of just be the best person that he can be and live to that standard. And like, it's extremely difficult to do that, right? Like, how many dictators do you know out there that are all powerful, that are good people? Zero.
You don't hear about them. If you do, if there are, you don't hear about them for sure.
Fucking
you don't hear about
power.
the fucking bad ones.
That's why Bitcoin's like so cool.
The world is
no one can corrupt it.
3 hours, bro. We're at 3 hours.
All right.
We're doing it.
Way to end it.
We're doing it.
Yeah,
we're doing it.